Chapter 1193. Takeout. Meg raised his eyebrows. Although winter had arrived, the hot pot was late, and the reward was extremely tempting. But what was the point of providing takeout orders? System, didn't you always emphasize that a master chef must have some class? Isn't delivering takeout lowering my class? Have you ever seen a Michelin 3-star restaurant deliver takeout? Meg pursed his lips. Furthermore, I'm already busy enough receiving customers, and there are many customers who can't even get a bite. Where would I find the energy and time to do takeout? Host, this takeout is not a casual order, but a humanitarian one. Under the premise that it doesn't affect the normal operation of the restaurant, we provide limited takeout services for customers who can't come to the restaurant in person. At the same time, we charge a certain amount for the delivery. Outside of the limited space, we expand the territory of the restaurant and gain more praise. The system said seriously, I can order the takeout dishes myself? Meg asked tentatively. This is up to the host's discretion. The 2-day countdown begins. Host, please recruit riders as soon as possible and start the business of takeout in another world. The system said briskly. Takeout riders. Meg looked up and saw Connie, who had already tiptoed to the restaurant's entrance. Her petite back view was only wearing a thin shirt, which had just been torn apart. It was a world of ice and snow outside, and a bunch of ferocious orcs were looking for her. Meg actually felt a little uneasy about letting her out like this. I say, Meg said. Hearing his voice, Connie stopped in her tracks. The blush on her face had not faded, and she panicked. Did he take it for real? But this wasn't a dream. She had kept her virginity for 16 years. Did she really have to give it to him just to repay the favor of this meal? Although he was quite handsome and the food was delicious, if he could cook such delicious food for her every day, letting him sleep with her would be no. Connie quickly shook her head and chased this shameful thought out of her mind. She still had to go back to save her brother and avenge her father. How could she let herself be trapped here just because of a delicious meal? Mother said that men are bad. I have to stay away from them. If I get kissed, I'll get pregnant. I can't get pregnant so easily. Do you have anywhere to go? Meg looked at Connie, who was frozen at the door, and asked. No, Connie answered instinctively. However, she regretted it as soon as she answered. Could Mag be testing her? After knowing that she had nowhere to go, he forced her to stay and lock her up in a dark room. The restaurant needs to recruit an employee. Do you want to give it a try? Mag didn't bother to guess what was going on in her head and went straight to the point. Employee? Connie was stunned for a moment. She said nervously, You mean to be your servant? She'll do everything and be done by you? Mag was speechless. What kind of person was this? Was he that kind of person? But could he still recruit this kind of employee? Where could he recruit her? No. Meg rubbed his forehead. He felt that he was being led astray by this fellow. At the same time, he had great doubts about his rash decision. Perhaps it wasn't a wise choice to keep this fellow. Meg calmed himself down and explained. Employee refers to the staff of the restaurant. Some employees are responsible for taking orders from the customers. Some are responsible for cleaning, and some are responsible for preparing the ingredients. They all have their own responsibilities. Do you have many employees? Connie cried out. Then how do you arrange for them to sleep? I said, the employees of the restaurant aren't responsible for sleeping with me. Meg couldn't help but say to her. Connie shrunk her neck and said weakly, You didn't say. All right, you can go now. Meg looked like he had nothing left to live for. He decided to take back his reckless decision. If I don't have to sleep with you, will you give me food every day? Or give me that gold coin? Connie asked softly after some serious thought. She had been in Chaos City for 2 days now. Chaos City was so big, but she couldn't find a place to stay. She had curled up under the bridge to sleep the night before, and was even bitten by a rat in the middle of the night. She was most afraid of rats. It seemed that the restaurant was quite clean, so there shouldn't be any rats. If she could sleep on the ground for the night, that would be pretty good. Moreover, after leaving the tribe, she realized that the outside world only recognized things like gold coins. No matter what it was necessary to have gold coins. It was a good thing. I think you're not suitable for this job. Meg shook his head coldly. Why? I can do anything other than sleep with you. Connie said confidently. I think you're too stupid. Meg still shook his head. Wah! Connie's pinkish-white cat ears drooped, and tears began to flow down her cheeks. Her shoulders shook as if she had been greatly wronged. What are you doing? Meg raised an eyebrow. He didn't expect this simple-minded girl to know how to use tears to gain sympathy. However, he hated people who acted pitiful the most. This only made him more certain of his decision. This kind of employee who only wanted to solve problems by crying, "Why don't I sleep with you? You just have to feed me. I'm very easy to feed, and I don't eat much." Connie grabbed Meg's arm and pressed herself against him. Her two soft lumps squeezed against Meg's arm until they were distorted. Stop, stop, stop. Meg hurriedly stopped this stupid girl. He pressed her head and pushed her back half a meter. It seemed that he had underestimated her. Her way of solving problems was quite unique. Looking at the weeping cat-eared girl, with her IQ, she would probably be abducted the moment she stepped out of the house. Moreover, she would be the kind of person who would laugh and count the money for the person who sold her. You have 3 days of probation. Prove to me that you're worthy of me keeping you. Otherwise, you still have to leave. After you're officially hired, I'll pay you and guarantee your safety. Meg said with a serious face. Okay. Connie nodded. She wiped her tears and looked at Meg excitedly. So what should I do now? Meg glanced at Connie's clothes that were full of holes and had a large tear in front of her chest. She was also sweaty because she hadn't bathed for many days. He frowned slightly and said, Go take a shower first. So soon? Connie was a little nervous. It's my first time. Chapter 1194. First time I asked. Meg flicked her forehead. What on earth was in there? He turned and walked upstairs as he said, I'm worried that the customers will complain about the smell on you. The staff of the restaurant must ensure that they're dressed neatly and don't have any smell, so that the customers won't have a bad dining experience. I see. Connie looked like she finally understood. She followed Meg upstairs. I'll get you a set of work clothes. Red, yellow, blue. Which color do you like? Meg asked. I like blue. It's the color of the sky. Connie answered quickly. Okay. Meg nodded slightly. He went upstairs and took Connie to the bathroom first. What a big faucet. Connie stood at the door of the bathroom. She looked at the shower head with fear. Then she saw several more faucets. She became even more nervous. Was Mr. Meg really a water dragon killer? This is the switch for the shower. After you turn it on, there will be warm water. This is shampoo and shower gel. The red one is to wet your hair and then apply it. It can wash off the stains on your hair. After you're done, rinse off the foam with water. The black one is to clean your body. After you apply it to your body, rinse it off with water too. Meg explained. He looked back at Connie and asked, Do you understand? Yes. Yes. Connie nodded. She swallowed her saliva secretly and said, But, do you really want me to face so many faucets alone? I'm a bit scared. Can you take a shower with me? No. Meg refused coldly. He wasn't stupid if she wanted to trick him into giving her a free shower. I'll put your clothes on the stool by the door. You can take them when you're done. I'll be downstairs in a bit. Meg walked out of the bathroom sideways. Please, don't leave me here alone. Connie grabbed the corner of Meg's clothes and said pitifully, There were 4 faucets in a small room. It was too scary. My restaurant doesn't accept customers with strange odors. Meg took back the corner of his shirt from Connie's hand and closed the bathroom door. He couldn't help but mutter, Does the York tribe have a tradition of men and women bathing together? Once the bathroom door closed, Connie was left alone. She leaned against the door and looked nervously at the 4 taps in the bathroom. The bathroom was very large, and the temperature was very warm. There was a large white tub in the innermost part, which seemed to be used for bathing. I was forced to do this. I didn't mean to offend you. Please don't blame me. Don't scare me. I'll just take a quick shower. Connie put her hands together and said to the faucet and the shower head sincerely. Then, she turned around and saw herself in the mirror. What is this? Why does it illuminate my beauty so clearly? Connie looked at the mirror and was stunned. Even a crystal mirror couldn't see her as clearly as this one. However, she soon realized that her face, neck, and arms were stained with sweat and mud. She had been running for her life for more than 10 days, and she didn't have time to take a shower. She sniffed carefully and realized that there was indeed a sour smell on her body. Oh my God, is this the smell coming from my body? Connie's face fell, and she quickly took off her clothes. She looked up at the shower head that was much bigger than a normal faucet and said apologetically, "Lord Dragon, I'll just borrow some of your water. If you can't rest in peace, please go and find the boss." Then, she turned on the switch. Warm water sprayed out from the shower head and dripped down from the top of her head, wetting her hair and body. Meow! She couldn't help but let out a soft moan from the comfortable feeling. As the hot water washed over her body, the fatigue that had accumulated along the way quickly disappeared. "It's so comfortable," Connie couldn't help but praise. The hot steam quickly filled the entire bathroom, and her fair skin turned pink. She washed the stains off her body. He said that this is for washing hair, and this is for washing body. Why is he using this strange liquid? After taking a hot shower, Connie's gaze fell on the shampoo and shower gel at the side. She hesitated for a moment, but still reached out and pressed the lid like Meg had taught her. A milky white liquid sprayed out and splashed all over her face. Oh! Connie instinctively closed her eyes and touched the liquid on her face with her hand. It was slippery, sticky, and strange to the touch. However, there was a very special fragrance, like the fragrance of flowers. It was refreshing and pleasant, and it didn't feel greasy at all. It felt a little familiar. "Is this shampoo?" Connie looked at the lotion in her hand and wiped it on her head. She scratched it casually, and it turned into many white bubbles. Wow, there are really bubbles. Connie's eyes lit up. She put the white bubbles to her mouth and blew gently. She smiled as she watched the bubbles fall. After washing her hair, she tried the shower gel. The shower gel was slippery on her body, and many bubbles appeared with a gentle rub. After washing, her entire body exuded a faint fragrance. "Oh, I know. This is the smell on Mr. Meg's body." Connie's eyes lit up. The sour smell on her body had completely disappeared. Her hair and body were clean, and her delicate skin was white with a hint of red. Looking at herself in the mirror, she couldn't help but want to take a bite. Am I really that ugly? Why isn't Mr. Meg even interested in sleeping with me? Or is it because I'm too young? Connie looked at herself in the mirror and sighed in self-pity. She was deeply hurt. "All right," he said he prepared clothes for me. "What kind of clothes will they be?" Connie thought expectantly. She hadn't worn warm clothes since leaving the tribe. She didn't want a pretty dress now, but a set of warm and comfortable clothes. Standing beside the door, her cat ears twitched. After confirming that there was no one outside, she carefully opened the bathroom door. Just as the door opened a crack, she saw a small stool placed at the entrance. On top of the stool was a set of sky blue clothes. On top of the stool was a piece of paper with words and pictures. Wow, it's the color of the sky. Connie's eyes lit up, and she reached out to pick up the clothes and the paper. The correct way to wear a bra. Connie read softly, and then took out a small piece of clothing with laces. She looked puzzled. What is this? The pattern is so pretty. Is it to be worn outside? Mag was sipping his afternoon tea leisurely with his legs crossed. When he heard the footsteps, he turned around and saw Connie, who was wearing a tidy sky blue windbreaker with a black lace bra. He spat out the tea in his mouth. Chapter 1195. Meg was dumbfounded when he saw Connie wearing a bra on the outside. Previously, there was Superman wearing underwear on the outside. Today, there was Catwoman wearing a bra on the outside. Was she trying to be a superhero? What's wrong? Am I that pretty? Connie touched the lace and looked at Meg in surprise. She didn't expect Meg to have such a big reaction after changing clothes. I say this bra is supposed to be worn inside. Why are you wearing it outside? Meg asked with raised eyebrows. Wear it inside? Why? Connie was puzzled. She tugged at the lace. Look, the pattern is so pretty. Wouldn't it look better if I wore it outside? This is a bra. Its function is... Meg gestured with his hand in front of his chest. He felt that it wasn't easy to describe, so he simply said, Anyway, this is a bra. It's meant to be worn close to the body. You can't wear it outside for others to see, especially men. It's against etiquette. If it can't be seen, then why is it made to look so pretty? There are small flowers and hollowed-out embroidery. It's such a pretty little bra. It'd be a pity if it can't be seen. Connie was still puzzled. Meg said helplessly, bras are made to look exquisite and cute. Apart from the fact that women like to look pretty, part of the reason is for their men to see in certain private situations. This kind of relationship is limited to lovers. No one would wear it outside. I see. Connie was deep in thought. Then, her eyes fell on Meg. Her eyes lit up. Then I'll wear it for you. Meg was confused. Did this girl not understand what he said? I don't have a lover, but I want someone to see how I look in this pretty little bra. Then, please be my lover for the time being, Connie said innocently. No, Meg refused flatly. Although he didn't mind watching a voluptuous lingerie show, he wasn't sure when Gina would return to the cafeteria, or if Amy, who was in class next door, would come back to the cafeteria to play for a while during the break. It would be hard to explain if they were to bump into each other. Also, there's a hidden buckle at the back of this little shirt. If you tie it directly, it will damage the elasticity of the shoulder strap. Meg glanced at the straps that were casually tied together behind Connie's back. The instructions given by the system were clearly very detailed. But you're disheveled. You're fired, Meg said coldly. Connie shut her mouth and went upstairs obediently. 10 minutes later, Connie came downstairs with a defeated look on her face. Holding the black bra in her hand, she stammered, I can't make them clasp together. Can you teach me? Meg looked at Connie and felt that he had been completely defeated by her stupidity. He reached out and took the black bra. There was no other way. It seemed like he could only teach her step by step. Look, first put your hands through the shoulder straps, then straighten the position of the bra so that it fits the curve of your body completely. Then, put your hands behind your back and grab a strap each. Use your fingers to feel the position of the hidden buckle. Fasten the hidden buckle, and the bra is put on. Do you understand now? Meg asked Connie. Connie nodded. Looking at Meg in the black bra, she asked curiously, But why are you so familiar with it? You'll naturally know how to tie it up after untying it too much, Meg said casually as he untied the bra with one hand. After Meg drowned, Connie took the bra upstairs again. Finally, Mr. Meg, Connie's voice came from upstairs. What's wrong now? Meg went upstairs with a despondent expression. The bathroom door was half open, revealing a beautiful back that was as smooth as jade. Her fair skin and beautiful curves slowly contracted downwards. By the time it reached her waist, it was already too small to hold in one's hand. Mag was caught off guard, so he took a few serious glances at it. My hand seemed to be too short. I can't buckle it up. Connie turned around and looked at Meg in embarrassment. Her arms went up and down to grab the straps behind her back. She kept going back and forth, but it was just a hair's breadth away. I'm sorry to trouble you. Meg sighed and reached out to help her buckle the straps. He closed the bathroom door with a click. What kind of idiot was this? After a series of messing around, Connie finally put on her work uniform correctly. She stood in front of Meg in high spirits. The clothes were too comfortable to wear. They completely insulated her from the cold. Even though it was a little hot to wear them indoors, Connie couldn't bear to take them off. Meg sized up Connie. The sky blue jacket fit her body perfectly. There were 2 dark lines on her arms and pants, which made the jacket look even more three-dimensional. On the other hand, Connie's excellent figure, as well as her somewhat elegant and noble temperament when she was serious, made the takeout outfit look like a custom-made item. Of course, this was built on the premise that she didn't say anything. The temperature outside was below -10 degrees Celsius, so Meg had the system add a layer of top-quality goose down to the jacket. Although it was light, it was very warm. It had the advantages of both a jacket and a down jacket, so it didn't need to worry about the cold at all. On her back, there were 3 eye-catching words. Are you full? Yes, this was the takeout brand that Meg had established in this world. The service's motto was, Are you full? If not, I'll send you more. Since there was no phone or internet in this world, the real-time interaction was too poor, so Meg didn't have any plans to expand for now. He hadn't even thought about how to launch his first takeout business. He couldn't let a customer order food and then have a delivery person send him home, right? Let's go. Let's practice driving. Meg took a dark blue safety helmet from the counter and put on Connie's head. Then, he walked towards the door. The safety helmet stuffed Connie's entire head into it. The super high-tech goggles provided her with a wide 270 degrees view. There was also a small screen on the top right, which was currently black. Wow, that's so cool. Connie followed behind Meg and looked around in awe. Then, she banged her head against the door. Meg looked back at Connie, who was like an alien holding the door in a flurry. He suddenly hesitated whether to teach her how to drive. If she was on the road, she would probably be a killer. The bicycle should be fine, right? Meg looked at the scientifically modified takeout bicycle in front of him. It was fully shock-absorbing, and the front basket was enlarged by several times. There was also a back seat with 2 delivery boxes installed. Its capacity was far greater than that of an ordinary delivery man's. What's this? Connie walked over a little exaggeratedly and asked curiously. Chapter 1196. This is a bicycle. Your job is to be a delivery man. You're responsible for delivering food to the customers. In order to ensure the freshness of the food, we need to deliver it faster. You have to learn how to ride a bicycle before you officially start working. Meg explained. Bicycle. Connie walked around the bicycle. Is it a bicycle that can run on its own as long as I sit on it? It's called a driverless bicycle. Meg shook his head. He didn't want to continue this silly conversation with Connie. He held the handlebars and got on the bicycle. I'll show you how to ride a bicycle. You have to learn it before sunset today. Okay. Connie answered and looked at Meg seriously. She had already made up her mind. She had to work hard to stay in the restaurant and make money to improve her strength so that she could return to the tribe as soon as possible to save her brother. That big bad guy had already become the new chief. She didn't know how long her brother could live. If he completely controlled the tribe, he might kill her brother. She had to find a way as soon as possible. Meg rode the bicycle and explained in detail how to step on the pedals, how to balance the bicycle, and how to brake to stop the bicycle. Do you know how to ride? Meg stopped beside Connie and looked at her. Yes, my eyes. Connie nodded. You're so honest. Meg was speechless. He stuffed the handlebars into Connie's hands. Start practicing. You won't be able to ride a bicycle without falling a few times. Okay, I'll definitely learn, Connie said confidently. She held the handlebars with both hands and imitated Meg's movements. She flipped onto the bicycle and put her feet on the pedals. Then she swayed left and right, trying hard to maintain her balance. Meg stood beside her and couldn't help swaying left and right. 5 minutes later, Meg looked at Connie, who was still swaying left and right on the pedals. He couldn't help but ask, Are you practicing the balance beam? Why don't you walk? Okay, Connie responded. As soon as she lifted her foot, the balance she had maintained for 5 minutes was broken. The car tilted to the right and plunged headfirst into the thick snow in the nearby haystack. Her entire head, including the helmet, sank in. It's stuck. Help! Connie's weak cries for help could be heard from the snow. Her 2 legs were dangling in the air, kicking powerlessly. Mag walked over, grabbed Connie's legs, and pulled her out from the snow upside down. This last was small, so she wasn't heavy. Connie's feet landed on the ground again. Her body swayed a little before she regained her balance. She said in a panic, Why is it so dark? Am I blind? Keep in touch, Meg said flatly as he wiped the snow off his helmet. He had already gotten used to Connie's idiotic behavior. Although her first fall was a little comical, her sense of balance was not bad. This was undoubtedly a very useful talent for learning how to ride a bicycle. Okay, Connie responded and continued to practice on the bike. After being pulled out of the snow by Mag for the nth time, Connie finally pedaled the bicycle and rode it forward unsteadily. Although she almost fell over countless times along the way, her good sense of balance saved her every time. Whoa, I learned how to ride a bicycle. Connie didn't finish her sentence before she fell headfirst into the snow. Meg walked over helplessly and pulled her out of the snow. He said coldly, Continue. Connie's talent for learning how to ride a bicycle in such a short amount of time on her first try was actually not bad. However, he didn't want to make her too proud, so he didn't praise her. After more than an hour of practice and countless falls, Connie braked and drifted. She stopped the bike in front of Meg. She reached out to pull up her helmet. Steam rose from the top of her head, but her face was full of joy. She looked at Meg and said, "I learned, didn't I?" "Yes, you've learned." Meg looked at Connie, who was sweating profusely but smiling happily. His impression of her changed a little. If other girls fell over and over like her, they would have squatted at the side and cried, or given up straight away. However, Connie didn't. It was as if she was holding back her energy. She fell over and over again and got up again and again. There were a few times when she fell on the ground, but she got up very quickly. She wasn't like the cat-eared girl who cried just now. "Then, do I start working now?" Connie was eager to try. "No, I'm going to bring you to familiarize yourself with the streets of Chaos City. The most important thing in delivering food is to deliver it to the customer quickly and accurately. So, after you receive the order, you have to know where you have to send the food to and how to take the route. These are all very important things." Meg shook his head and then pointed to the top right corner of Connie's helmet. "I've installed a map there. Although it can't pinpoint the location in real time, it will automatically plan the best delivery route for you, as long as you tell it the destination." Connie put the helmet back on, and a map appeared on the black screen at the top right corner of the helmet. "That's awesome." Connie's eyes widened. Mr. Meg was a genius. Not only did he invent the bicycle, he even invented such an amazing map. Meg pushed his bicycle out and got on. He then reminded Connie, "Remember, don't remove your helmet when you're outside. That way, no one will recognize you." Connie nodded. Mr. Meg was so thoughtful. Furthermore, the helmet wasn't heavy at all, and it was super warm inside. She didn't want to take it off when she was outside. "Let's go. I'll show you around Chaos City." Meg pedaled the bicycle away first, and Connie quickly got on as well and followed behind Meg. Who's this cute cat-eared big sister? Father actually taught her how to ride a bicycle, and they even came out of the restaurant together just now. What's their relationship? Should I record this in my little notebook? Amy mumbled softly as she leaned against the window on the second floor of the magic potion shop and watched the two of them disappear into the distance. Meg brought Connie around the southern part of the city and saw that it was almost 5 p.m., so he brought her back to the restaurant. Anyway, the system only required him to open up the food delivery system and gave him a lot of autonomy in other aspects. Hence, he decided to do limited food delivery within a limited area. Since the food in the restaurant couldn't meet the demand, he didn't even think about making money from food delivery. A few orders would be enough. The most important thing was to complete the system's mission and get the recipe for the Mandarin duck hot pot. "Father, who's this woman?" Amy pushed the door open and entered just as Meg and Connie arrived at the restaurant. Chapter 1197. Amy looked at Connie with indignation and anger in her eyes. She was like a kitten who had just discovered that the dried fish she had hidden had been eaten by her owner. "Amy, she's—" Meg looked at Amy, who seemed a little angry, and prepared to explain the situation. "You actually have a daughter behind my back." Connie also shrieked at this moment. She looked at Meg with resentment, like a wife who had suddenly discovered that her husband was keeping another woman behind her back and had even given birth to a child. Even Meg was taken aback by her natural acting skills, vivid emotions, and overflowing anger. He couldn't help but recall his relationship with this young girl. "That's not right. What kind of a Jura field is this? I've only taken in a homeless girl who was forced by a bad guy and made her temporarily serve as a delivery girl at a restaurant." Meg quickly came back to his senses. He flicked Connie's forehead, who was glaring at him as if she wanted an explanation immediately. He rolled his eyes and said, "Am I supposed to be a stranger in front of you?" "Ugh." Connie covered her forehead with her hand and murmured with indignation, "But you really didn't tell me that you have a daughter." Then Meg looked at Amy. This little fellow had never been hostile to beautiful big sisters, but her behavior today was a little unusual. Amy felt Meg's gaze and immediately smiled widely. "Actually, I'm just curious who this beautiful big sister with cat ears is." Those pink and white cat ears are so cute. Can I touch them? Of course. Little sister, you're so cute too. You're just like a little elf. Connie nodded with a smile. She looked at Amy with joy in her eyes. She loved playing with children the most. She felt that playing with and interacting with them was more enjoyable. Meow. At this moment, Ugly Duckling walked out from behind Amy and stretched lazily. Then it looked at Connie with disdain, walked up, and jumped lightly onto the cabinet. Ugly Duckling's head crashed into the edge of the counter, and even though it tried its best to grab onto the table with its paws, it still slid down slowly. It landed on the ground with a dull thud and lay on its back as it stared at the counter with a dejected expression. This cat is so dumb. Connie chuckled. The pot calling the kettle black, Meg thought. Ugly Duckling, I told you not to eat so much. Amy looked at Ugly Duckling with disappointment written all over her little face and said seriously, Your dinner is canceled today and you have to run 10 laps around the restaurant. Otherwise, you're not allowed to go to sleep. Meow. Ugly Duckling immediately got up and walked over to Amy's feet while shaking its head. It rubbed its head against her calf, trying to act cute in exchange for dinner. There's no room for discussion. Amy shook her head coldly. Meow. Ugly Duckling lay on the ground with its paws in the air, dejected. Yabamia and the others arrived soon after. When they saw Connie, they were all curious about who this adorable cat-eared young girl was. So many beautiful young ladies. Mr. Meg is indeed a powerful man, Connie thought to herself. In the past, she could still be considered the belle of the tribe. But now, in this restaurant, it seemed like any young lady was prettier than her. Meg introduced, This is Connie, a new employee I just hired today. She will be working with all of you in the future and will be responsible for the delivery of food. Let's get to know each other. Hello, I'm Connie. Connie greeted everyone. Connie, hello, I'm Mia. Welcome to the restaurant. Mia was the first to go up and gave Connie a gentle hug with an amiable smile. Hello, I'm Barbara. Barbara went up and shook hands with Connie. Then, she looked at her cat ears curiously. Are these real ears? They're real, Connie said proudly. As she spoke, her pinkish-white cat ears twitched. So cute. Barbara's eyes lit up. She had never seen a cat-eared girl in the Moon Nation. She felt like her blood was going to drain. Meow. Ugly Duckling went up to Amy and started twitching its ears crazily. You're just a duck. Even if you can move your ears, you're just a fat duck that can move your ears. Amy turned Ugly Duckling's face to Connie. Look at big sister Connie's pinkish-white ears. How adorable. Meow. Ugly Duckling meowed aggrievedly and looked at Connie with hostility. Elizabeth. Elizabeth introduced herself coldly. She wasn't good at interacting with people. In Amy's, she had changed a lot. Hello, Connie replied carefully. She could feel the aura of a powerful person from Elizabeth. This cold and elegant woman was very powerful. At such a young age, it meant that she had super talent. This was what she wanted. You guys chat first. I'll go and make dinner. Meg turned and walked towards the kitchen. It seemed like Connie would be able to get along well with everyone. After all, other than her stupid thinking, Connie's appearance and personality were actually quite likable. The steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers at noon didn't significantly increase Connie's IQ. Hence, Meg gave up on the idea of feeding her brain at night. Instead, he made a spicy grilled fish. Connie thought chopped chili was already the spiciest, but after chewing a piece of pepper, she successfully cried because of the spiciness. My mouth isn't mine anymore, Connie said in a sobbing tone as she smacked her lips. Tears were already glistening in her eyes. Everyone burst into laughter when they saw Connie's embarrassed look. After dinner, Mia and the others helped to clean up the dining room. Then, where will Connie be staying at night? Mia asked Meg. Although Connie didn't tell them about her background in detail, she didn't hide that she had nowhere to go. Connie looked at Meg and thought in her heart, although it's not very good to sleep on the same bed with a man, if he invites me, should I reject or accept? After Phyllis left, her room is empty. Let Connie stay there, Meg said directly. Shouldn't I be sleeping with you? Connie blurted out. Everyone turned to look at Meg and Connie in surprise. Was there some secret relationship between the two of them? I'm a man that you can't sleep with. Meg glanced at Connie and said calmly, Go with Mia and the others. Go sleep in the staff dormitory. Today is Monday, and the weather's fine. Father saved a cute big sister with cat ears, and she invited him to sleep with her. Amy wrote a line in her little notebook. Chapter 1198. Before going to bed that night, Meg told Amy and Anna a short story as usual. Amy had already fallen asleep with Ugly Duckling in her arms. Anna, who was lying next to her, closed her eyes. Soon, she opened her eyes and looked at Meg. Anna, what's wrong? Can't sleep? Meg asked softly. The little girl seemed to have something on her mind. I'm thinking if Big Sister Phyllis has reached the place, and if Big Sister Shirley is doing well. Anna nodded with a worried expression. Meg suddenly realized that the little one was worried about Phyllis and Shirley. She was really a sensible and kind child. He smiled and said, So that's what you're worried about. The people who sent Phyllis to the north have returned. They told me that Phyllis has safely reached the meeting place with the night elves, and they even met Shirley. She's doing well. She's not injured, and there's food now. Phyllis will cook for them. Really? Anna's eyes lit up. Meg nodded with certainty. That's great. It's good that they're fine, Anna said with a smile. So, our little Anna should quickly go to bed. Otherwise, they'll be worried about whether you can sleep well and eat well, Meg said with a smile as he tucked Anna in. Anna closed her eyes obediently. Meg switched off the lights and went to the balcony to practice his swordsmanship for a while. He took a shower before lying down on the bed and thinking about the takeout. Expanding the takeout section was a way for many restaurants to increase their revenue. However, that was on Earth. The convenience and speed of mobile ordering and a huge number of yellow and blue nights provided the basic conditions for real-time delivery. Now, not only were there no mobile phones, but there were also no telephones. How the customer's order became the problem that Meg had to consider. It's too unrealistic to forcefully bring this world into the age of telecommunications for a takeout. Let's not talk about how many years it would take to plan this. The most important thing is how to complete tomorrow's mission. Meg rejected the idea of popularizing telephones. After thinking seriously for a while, an idea suddenly flashed through his mind. The system's words gave him a good idea. Tatari City was situated at the northwestern border of the Roth Empire. There were 50,000 Imperial cavalrymen stationed there, and it was the most important military base at the northwestern border of the empire. Further west was the Orcs' territory. The Orc tribes and the Roth Empire had been going through wars of varying degrees all year round. For the past few decades, the Orcs had used their great power and mobility to pillage the villages and towns at the borders of the empire. The people at the borders had suffered immensely. However, ever since Alex took over Tata, he no longer chased after the plundering Orcs. Instead, he led his troops to the hinterland of the Orcs 3 times and slaughtered several tribes that had invaded the borders of the empire many times. He did not let a single one of them go. Since then, the Beastmen tribes no longer dared to cross the border to plunder. However, large and small wars never stopped to the northwest border. Alex was no longer the city lord of Tatari. Now, Crown Prince Sean was the city lord of this majestic city. As the commander-in-chief of the Northwest Army, Sean was also the city lord of this strategic town. Yesterday, Sean had just returned from Rodu to the city lord's castle in Tatari. In the city lord's castle, Sean and 4 to 5 armored generals gathered in the meeting hall. A middle-aged general looked at Sean and said, Your Highness, the Empire's Northwest Army is basically under your control now. It has a strength of 300,000, and they're all valiant cavalry that have been fighting against the Orcs for a long time. His Majesty has not appointed you as the successor to the throne for a long time. Recently, he's been changing the deputy generals of the Northwest Army. What do you think? You want me to rebel? Sean looked up at that general with a cold voice. That general did not avoid his gaze. He stood up decisively and said, Your Highness is wise and courageous. You have been fighting at the borders for more than 10 years and have gone through life and death with us. We have long regarded you as the successor to the throne. That second highness has been living like a prince in Rodu since he was young. He doesn't know how to command troops, nor does he know the ferocity of the orcs. If he becomes the king, he will definitely not be a good king. If the king insists on appointing the second highness as the successor, we are willing to honor you as the king." The other generals also stood up at the same time and respectfully said to Sean, "We are willing to honor your highness as the king." Sean looked at the generals, and his expression softened slightly. However, his voice was still low, and he said, "Father is still healthy. Don't mention the matter of the throne again, and don't mention it to anyone else. Otherwise, all of you and I will die." But that general still wanted to say something. "Josh may have the support of the Magus Tower, but magic casters are ultimately just assistants. They can't achieve great things. You should be more anxious than I am." "Why should we be anxious?" Sean chuckled as a sinister look flashed across his eyes. "Rodu, Magus Tower. The towering Magus Tower could overlook the entire Rodu, and even the royal palace could be seen at a glance. As the number of magic casters increased and the power of the Magus Tower increased, the status of the Magus Tower gradually became equal to that of the military. The magic casters of the Empire more or less had the mark of the Magus Tower on them. They fought in the army like the knights, guarding the Empire's territory and protecting the Empire's citizens. They were deeply respected and loved by the citizens. At this moment, on the top floor of the Magus Tower, Josh was standing by the window, looking at the similarly towering Royal Palace Tower. He didn't know how long it would take for him to officially enter that palace and become the most powerful person on the Norland continent. Many years ago, as the second prince, he had never thought of becoming the master of that palace. Magic was more attractive to him than that throne that was studded with gems. Until he met the elven princess who left a message on the top floor of the Magus Tower. He fell in love at first sight. That was it. After that, Alex appeared. Then, her heart ran away with him. That was a man who made all the men in the world pale in comparison. He was like the brightest star that suddenly appeared. Even though he was the second prince of the Empire, he was still so lowly that people could easily overlook him. From then on, he understood that even if he spent his entire life learning magic, he would never be able to defeat Alex before the end of his life. Thus, he began to crave and pursue power. A man, even if he was a god, would still be bitten to death by countless ants. 3 years ago, he thought that Alex was already dead and that Irina's heart was about to belong to him. However, 3 years later, he appeared again, still as powerful and invincible as ever, and stole her heart again. Josh turned to Richard, who was standing behind him, and asked, "President, when can I become the king of the Roth Empire?" "Soon." Richard cast his deep gaze toward the royal palace, and then looked up into the sky. A bright star was gradually dimming as if it had been covered by a layer of fog. He murmured to himself, "The Emperor's star is about to be destroyed, and a new king is about to be born." In a large courtyard in the northwestern corner of the royal palace, there were dozens of carpenters who were busy with their work. Yuri sat on a high chair, looking at the mecha that had been modified to become even more majestic. He sighed and said, "Idiot, do you think many people will die if we use this on the battlefield?" "Your Highness, His Majesty said that this is to be used to guard the territory, and it can reduce the casualties of many knights." A servant at the side whispered in agreement. "If it's just to guard the territory, who would dare to invade the Empire apart from the giant dragons? If the giant dragons were to invade, these pieces of wood wouldn't be of much use." Yuri shook his head, but there was still a hint of melancholy in his eyes. He looked up into the sky and sadly said, "I suddenly want to play with that little idiot." Chapter 1199. "Connie, this is your room. Boss has prepared a set of toiletries for you in the bathroom. Yours is blue," Mia said with a smile as she led Connie into the room. "Thank you," Connie said. Her eyes were completely attracted by the furnishings and warm decorations in the room. There was a big, comfortable bed, a beautiful dressing table, and a floor-to-ceiling window facing the square. When the curtains were pulled open, the starlight shone through the window. "This room is amazing," Connie exclaimed. She lay down gently on the bed and felt the soft silk blanket slowly wrap around her. The warm and soft feeling was too comfortable. After sleeping in the open for half a month, she finally had a place to stay. She didn't expect it to be so comfortable. Mia looked at Connie, who was lying on the bed, and smiled. When she lay on the big bed in the room for the first time, she felt the same way as Connie. She felt that she could lie on the bed for the rest of her life because it was so comfortable. After enjoying the softness and warmth on the bed for a while, Connie reluctantly got up to wash up. When she entered the bathroom, she was slightly surprised to see the 2 taps. Boss is really a dragon fetish. He even installed taps in the staff dormitory. Connie muttered. Then she turned on the tap and splashed a handful of warm water on her face. She smiled widely. I'm going to install taps at home in the future. It's so convenient. By the way, how long has Mamie's been closed? Why do I feel like it's been 100 years? It's been closed for 7 or 8 days. Is Mr. Mac too full of himself? He didn't open the store for more than 10 days. Bro, you math. Did you learn it from your PE teacher? Don't tell me. Our PE teacher was our math teacher's husband. He took up our math teacher's class every day and didn't go to the field. He only taught us math. Half of our class almost didn't graduate. Early in the morning, there was a long line in front of Mamie's. Many people arrived earlier than the cleaners. When they saw the notice on the door had been removed, they sighed in relief. The cleaners arrived at Mamie's at 6:30 a.m. on time. They hadn't eaten Mr. Mac's congee for 2 days, so they felt a lot colder when they were sweeping. A mouthful of congee early in the morning could warm them up for the whole day. The door opened with a soft ding. Mia came out with a big pot in her hands. Barbara and the others came out with big bowls. Meg was at the back of the line with a big spoon and a notice board. Harrison, who was at the front of the line, curiously asked, Boss Mag, you said yesterday that you were releasing a new product today. Is it out? Everyone's eyes lit up upon hearing that. Could it be that Boss Mag had taken a few days off to develop a new product? If there was a new delicacy that could comfort his stomach that had been waiting for a few days, then he could forget about being stood up for no reason. It's written on the notice board. Meg hung the notice board on the door with a smile. He carried the big spoon to the metal bucket whose lid had been removed. Today's new item, steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers. Available only at noon and in the evening. Everyone looked at the notice board. Someone at the front of the line read it out loud. Steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers? It sounds like another spicy fish dish. Shouldn't the fish head be thrown away? Why can it still be made into a dish? Is it really delicious? As someone who likes to eat fish, I'm really looking forward to this new item. Also, the meat near the fish head is super tender. The customers in the line started to talk about the new item. Meg just smiled and didn't answer. Deliciousness could only be understood by tasting it. If he said too much, it would be easy for people to make unnecessary associations. He scooped the piping hot congee with pork and century egg into big bowls and passed it to the cleaners whose hands and feet were cold. Looking at the honest smiles on their faces would make one's mood better. With the help of Mia and the rest, more than 30 bowls of congee with pork and century egg were quickly distributed to the cleaners. They held the big bowls and slurped the hot congee while sitting on the steps. The regulars who came to line up early in the morning couldn't help but swallow their saliva. Mr. Mac, why don't you sell me a bowl of congee with pork and century egg in your pot? Who can stand watching others eat so early in the morning and didn't eat enough last night? A regular said to Meg with a melancholy look. Yeah, Mr. Mac, look at how early we came. Let everyone have a mouthful of hot congee first. We're all regular customers. We can even stand to eat. The other customers also echoed. A bowl of hot congee in the middle of winter was better than anything else. Although most of them were famous people, they didn't care at all. The congee with pork and century egg was just launched by Mamie Restaurant a few days ago. It was only available for breakfast. As the youtiao and soy milk were too delicious, not many people were interested in trying this new breakfast dish that had just been launched. However, the customers in the line were cold and hungry. Looking at the hot congee and smelling the tempting fragrance, their stomachs started to growl. Only then did they realize that they might have underestimated this breakfast item. It's not opening time yet. This congee with pork and century egg is specially provided for them, so I can't sell it to you." Meg shook his head. There was no room for negotiation. He was a little puzzled and said, "Besides, there's still an hour before opening time. You can come and line up later." "Why do you have to line up so early in the morning? If you line up earlier every day, won't you be the ones who suffer?" "Mr. Mack, isn't this your fault? I go to work at 8 o'clock. In order to eat breakfast made by you before going to work. If I come late and line up at the back, I'll definitely be late for work." A young lady coughed twice and complained. "Yeah, we want to come later, but if we come later, the seats in front will be taken. Mr. Mack, the more famous you are, the more difficult it will be for us customers. Talking about it makes me cry." The other customers nodded. Who wouldn't want to sleep in their warm beds at home at this time, because they were afraid that they wouldn't be able to make it in time for breakfast? Most of the people who came early had to go to work to open the store. Of course, there were also people who came early because they hadn't eaten Mamie's food for 3 days. Meg looked at the crowd and felt a little apologetic. It was really not easy to line up so early in the middle of winter. Everyone looked at Meg and wondered if Meg would be moved and make breakfast for them in advance. Meg thought about it seriously and said, "How about this? I'll set a rule. In the future, we won't allow customers to line up half an hour before opening time. Even if you come early, you can only line up half an hour earlier." Chapter 1200. That's a good idea. Otherwise, when Mr. Mack becomes famous in the future, those people will line up in the middle of the night. Then, us regulars won't be able to eat your food, Harrison agreed. The other customers nodded in agreement. This way, they wouldn't have to worry about others lining up too early. Meg had thought of a good idea. The regulars all knew Meg's temper. He definitely wouldn't provide them with breakfast before the time was up. Furthermore, the food in the pot was for the cleaners, so there was no extra food for them. Therefore, they didn't continue to mention the previous meal. "These fellows, I'll see how long you can eat. None of these rich people are good. They're just suddenly showing kindness. They'll regret it soon." Elton was chewing on a cold pancake in the distance. He shivered and looked in the direction of Amy's with hatred as he muttered to himself. Then he took a big bite of the pancake in his hand. After the cleaners were done with their breakfast, Mia returned to the dining hall with the remaining half of a large bucket. This was their breakfast. "There are so many customers. Will anyone recognize me?" Connie hid in the restaurant and looked at the people outside worriedly. Then she silently put on the helmet. "Say, don't you feel hot wearing a helmet in the restaurant?" Meg looked at the fully equipped Connie and couldn't help but laugh. The temperature in the restaurant was 26 degrees Celsius, and this fellow was wearing equipment that could drive at minus 15 degrees Celsius. Wasn't this a joke? I feel like I'm going to get a heat stroke. Connie's weak voice came out from the hat, and then she fainted on the spot. "Connie, are you okay?" Everyone gathered around and looked at Connie with concern. However, none of them were good at healing magic, so they couldn't do anything at the moment. "Leave it, I'll do it." Meg put the spoon in his hand into the bucket, and then walked towards Connie helplessly. A certain cat-eared girl got a heat stroke at minus 15 degrees Celsius because she wore too many clothes. If this kind of ridiculous news were to spread, it should be able to get a place in the ridiculous world, right? Meg thought to himself. He took the helmet off Connie's head and then opened her down jacket. He asked the system to lower the temperature in her area by a few degrees, and then took out a bottle of Hua Xiang Zhengqi water from the medicine box and poured it down her throat. Amy, who was yawning, came downstairs and saw this scene. She couldn't help but open her eyes wide. Father put Sister Connie, who's sweating on the ground, and then pulled her clothes of her mouth. "What is he doing?" Connie's eyes watery, and said to what? Ofs, to taste. What? Of a view of the world. She looked like a young girl who had just woken up after being drugged. What should have happened had already happened, and she was looking innocently at the person who had drugged her. "I've done what needed to be done." Meg stood up calmly and walked to the table. You. Connie looked like she had been wronged. "Connie, the boss saved you. Drink some water and then eat." Yabamiya brought a cup of warm water over and helped Connie up with a smile. "I see." Connie looked at the people around her. With so many people watching, the boss probably didn't do anything strange to her. She took the cup of water and rinsed her mouth. The strange smell was so strong that it woke her up immediately. Don't wear the helmet and jacket in the restaurant in the future. Otherwise, you'll continue to faint, Meg said to Connie, who was about to zip up her jacket again. Okay. Connie nodded. She put the helmet to the side and then took off her jacket. It's much cooler now, Connie muttered. Because she was afraid of the cold a few days ago, she couldn't bear to take off her warm clothes now that she was wearing them. After breakfast, Meg sent Amy to class and hung a notice on the door. Mamie's takeout service trial. Starting today, the restaurant's food delivery service is limited to customers who can't come to the restaurant in person but must eat the restaurant's food. Dishonest customers will be blacklisted. Today's trial is limited to one order. A customer read aloud. Takeout? What's that? Takeout service? Does that mean we can eat Mamie's food at home? Isn't this restriction a bit harsh? As long as your legs are healthy, you'll probably be excluded from the restricted group, right? The key is that it's limited to one order, right? Does that mean it's only one order per day? The customers soon showed great interest in the content of the announcement, but they also felt that it was not very practical. After all, they were going to the restaurant in person. Why would they order takeout to eat at home? Wouldn't it be more enjoyable to sit in a restaurant and eat the freshly cooked food? Ahem, what should we have for breakfast today? Yangzhou fried rice or soy milk and youtiao. In the line, a young woman covered her mouth and coughed lightly. She looked thoughtful, and suddenly her eyes lit up. All right, why don't we try the congee with pork and century egg that the cleaners had just now? They looked pretty good eating it. Bonnie was the manager of a medium-sized jewelry store. She was able to get to this position at the age of 26, which showed her ability. However, it wasn't so easy to be a manager. Back then, she had been first in sales for 3 consecutive years. She didn't know how many customers she had to receive every day and how many compliments she had to say. She almost didn't rest all day long, and although she paid attention to taking care of her throat, it still caused problems. Although she didn't need to receive a large number of customers now, she still had to personally receive many of the regulars. Her throat was often dry and itchy, especially when she woke up every morning. No matter how much warm water she drank, it didn't help. She didn't feel like eating anything. She happened to hear a customer mention Amy's, so she came over with the intention of giving it a try. She unearthed a huge gourmet treasure, and her daily breakfast was settled. Although her throat was still dry and itchy, the problem of her stomach was finally solved. In the jewelry business, image and etiquette were very important. It was very rude to cough in front of customers. Although she tried her best to control it, she still couldn't help but cough once or twice sometimes. There were many capable girls eyeing her position. 2 days ago, her boss even specially talked to her for a while. Although it was in the name of concern, she knew in her heart that if the condition of her throat continued to be like this, or worsened, then she wouldn't be far from losing this job. During this period of time, she had taken a lot of medicine, but the effect was really mediocre. She was already prepared to find a magic pharmacist recommended by a customer after work today to try it out. The restaurant opened for business, and the customers in the front line took their seats. Connie flipped open the menu and took a look. When Mia came over to order, she gently closed the menu and said with a smile, "I'll have a congee with pork and century egg and a sweet tofu pudding. Thank you." Chapter 12:01. Bonnie looked up at the alarm clock hanging on the wall. She had to receive a distinguished guest this morning, Madame Mafia from the Marquis family. She was a regular customer of the jewelry store and spent tens of millions on jewelry every year. She had known Madame Mafia for many years, and she was the one who received her every time. That had never changed after she became the store manager. However, Madame Mafia had a severe case of mysophobia, and her requirements for all aspects were almost perverted. After interacting with her for so many years, Bonnie was already used to dealing with all kinds of situations. However, the problem she had to worry about today was not others, but her own throat. Cough, cough. Bonnie coughed softly with her handkerchief and nodded apologetically to the elf sitting opposite her. If she coughed in front of Madame Mafia, she might not come to this jewelry store again. Her job, which was already in a precarious situation, might become even worse. I should have gone to find that magic pharmacist yesterday. Even if it's just an emergency potion, I should have prepared a portion. She sighed in her heart. She could only go to the shop and drink more water to stop her coughing. Your congee with pork and century egg and sweet tofu pudding. Yabamiya walked over with a tray and placed the congee with pork and century egg and sweet tofu pudding down. The aroma of meat and a unique aroma wafted over along with the hot steam. Smells so good. Bonnie's eyes lit up, and her gaze was instantly attracted by the congee with pork and century egg in front of her. There were translucent century eggs and lean meat hidden in the thick white congee, and a small handful of tender chopped green onions was sprinkled on top. The aroma filled the air. Bonnie's stomach was growling after lining up early in the morning. She was craving this congee when she saw the cleaners outside. So she also ordered a portion. Bonnie didn't know if it was her imagination, but the aroma of the congee with pork and century egg seemed to be even stronger than the congee the cleaners ate earlier. Century egg? Mr. Mac is always so interesting when he names his food. Bonnie chuckled and scooped up a spoonful of congee with a wooden spoon. There was a translucent brown century egg in it. She suddenly had an idea. She raised the wooden spoon and looked out of the window. The crystal clear century egg was actually shining with a gem-like luster, and its surface was even covered with beautiful patterns that resembled pine flowers. Wow! Bonnie opened her mouth wide in disbelief. She had worked in the jewelry store for so many years, and this was comparable to the luster and transparency of many precious gems. The beautiful and gentle luster made it hard for her to imagine that this was just an egg. This should be called a gem egg. Mr. Mac is a great artist. Bonnie gasped in admiration. She couldn't help but feel curious. A whole century egg should be very beautiful, right? Although she couldn't bear to part with it, the fragrance in her rumbling stomach still made Bonnie eat the porridge with pork and century egg. The porridge melted almost immediately in his mouth, with a hint of meaty aroma and a special egg aroma. Next was the preserved egg, the main character of the porridge. The soft and delicious porridge did not make the century egg soft. It was neither hard nor soft. When it resisted the tongue, it had a strange elasticity. Bonnie let the century egg play on the tip of her tongue for a while. After confirming that there was no way to melt it, she tried to bite it open with her tongue. It was soft and elastic. After biting it open, a faint fragrance bloomed on the tip of her tongue. This was the source of the unique fragrance of the porridge with pork and century egg. The more she chewed, the more fragrant it became. Bonnie chewed on the century egg happily, as if she was a child who had discovered a great joy. She felt that her gloomy mood seemed to brighten up a lot. After swallowing the crushed century egg, it turned into a refreshing coolness that slid down her throat into her stomach. It was as if she had swallowed a mouthful of refreshing cough medicine. Bonnie actually felt that the dryness in her throat had lessened a lot, and even her breathing had become much smoother. This is... Bonnie touched her throat in disbelief. The refreshing feeling was gradually fading, but the dryness did not immediately rebound. Instead, it was as if she had been splashed with a scoop of ice water, and she had no strength to fight back at that moment. Could it be that this porridge with pork and century egg can relieve the dryness in my throat? Bonnie was pleasantly surprised. She picked up the spoon and scooped another mouthful of porridge with pork and century egg into her mouth. After swallowing the chewed century egg along with the porridge, the refreshing feeling in her throat became even more obvious. It's really effective. Bonnie ate the porridge with pork and century egg mouthful after mouthful of hot porridge. Her stomach gradually warmed up, but her throat was exceptionally refreshing and warm. The dryness in her throat was completely swept away. This feeling is really too comfortable. There is only one feeling in Bonnie's heart. Usually, she would be bothered by the dryness in her throat for a long time every morning. She had to drink a lot of warm water and take a lot of lozenges to barely relieve it. But now, Just a bowl of porridge with pork and century egg had achieved an effect that had never been achieved before. Ding! Bonnie looked at the empty bowl in front of her. She had unknowingly finished a bowl of delicious porridge with pork and century egg. The dryness in her throat had been completely suppressed. The refreshing and warm feeling even made her want to hum a tune. Delicious and unique porridge with pork and century egg. Looks like I don't have to worry about my throat today. Bonnie touched her throat gently with a smile on her face. She moved the empty bowl in front of her to the side and took the bowl of sweet tofu pudding to eat. Eating a bowl of tofu pudding every morning after waking up made her skin smoother and smoother. The whitening effect was also many times better than pearl powder. This had already become the biggest motivation for Bonnie to come to the restaurant half an hour earlier to line up. If she was late, she wouldn't be able to eat it. May I know if the porridge with pork and century egg can be packed? I would like to pack a small portion to take away. Bonnie finished her tofu pudding and raised her hand to gesture for Yabamiya to come over. The porridge with pork and century egg can be packed. It's a small portion. Please wait at the counter to collect it. Mia nodded and informed Anna, who then went forward to settle the bill for Bonnie. Thank you. Bonnie received the packed porridge with pork and century egg very quickly, and left Amy's with the porridge with a smile. Although her throat was clear now, and she didn't feel like coughing at all, she didn't like to take risks. She would pack a portion of porridge with pork and century egg to take away and eat a few mouthfuls before the appointed time to ensure that nothing went wrong. Shia Jewelry was one of the top 3 jewelry stores in Chaos City. It was opened in the busiest part of Aiden Square. There were many jewelry stores around, and Shia Jewelry Store was undoubtedly the most dazzling one. Bonnie was the first to reach the store. She placed the porridge with pork and century egg back in her manager's office before arranging the work for the employees who came to the store one after another. I heard that Madame Mafia would come to the restaurant this morning. The store manager's throat seems to have gotten worse these few days. Will there be any problems? A young employee said softly with a worried expression. Madame Mafia is a clean freak. If the store manager coughs in front of her, she will definitely not come to our Shia Jewelry again. Then, we will lose a big customer. I wonder if the boss will be heartbroken, an older employee said with a chuckle with a hint of schadenfreude in her eyes. Chapter 1202. Seems like she can't hold it in any longer. She wants me to be fired so that she can take over the position herself. Has she reached such a stage where she doesn't even bother to hide it? Bonnie, who was walking to the store manager's office with a cup of warm water, happened to hear that employee's words. She laughed self-deprecatingly. Callie was 5 to 6 years more experienced than her. She thought she would be the best choice for the next store manager after the previous one left. However, the boss chose Bonnie, who had a better track record. In this industry, track record and customer resources were the most important. Track record couldn't decide everything. Although she seemed to be convinced, Callie had been bad-mouthing her behind her back. She was especially pleased when she saw that Bonnie's throat problem was getting worse. Bonnie knew all that, but she couldn't be bothered to argue with her. Her superior track record was enough for the boss to ignore any gossip. If she were to leave Shia Jewelry now, the sales volume of Shia Jewelry would drop by half. All the jewelry stores in Chaos City were willing to extend an olive branch to her, including the 2 stores with the highest ranking. Of course, this was built on the premise that Bonnie's throat and body were healthy. A sales and store manager who coughed all day was undoubtedly unqualified. That was the source of her anxiety during this period. However, her mood and throat were exceptionally refreshing today. She hadn't experienced such a refreshing and comfortable feeling for a long time. Her throat felt like it was a few years younger. It would be great if it could last for a day, Bonnie thought to herself. Even if it was only for half a day, she wouldn't mind having congee with pork and century egg for lunch. She was completely conquered by the scrumptiousness. Callie shut her mouth immediately when she saw Bonnie, but she didn't hide the disdain in her eyes. The boss's attitude had been wavering recently. A woman who coughed all the time wasn't fit to be the store manager. If she were to lose Madame Mafia, a big customer, that woman would be removed from the store manager's position. I've worked in this jewelry store for 20 years, and contributed all my youth. The store manager's position should belong to me. Callie thought to herself as she looked at Bonnie. The other employees continued to work quietly, although many of them preferred the general manager Bonnie. If Bonnie was removed from the store manager's position, they would have to be more respectful to her if they wanted to have an easier time working under Callie. Madame Mafia will be here at 9 o'clock. Before she arrives, get a water magician to clean the jewelry shop thoroughly. Push back all other invitations to noon. Bonnie's gaze swept across everyone in the shop and finally landed on Callie. She said in a slightly cold voice, "I will personally receive Madam. If anyone makes a mistake that causes Madam's displeasure or even more serious consequences, she will bear all the responsibility." What if it was the store manager who made Madam unhappy? Kelly didn't avoid her gaze and asked with a smile. "That's not something you can meddle in. Boss has his own judgment," Bonnie said calmly. Kelly's eyelids twitched, but she still swallowed her anger. She thought resentfully, "Let's see how long you can last. If Madame Mafia's order fails, your reputation in the circle will be completely ruined." Amy's. Meg glanced at the customers who were gradually leaving. He turned to look at Mia and asked, "Still no one ordered takeout?" "Yes." Although there were a few customers who asked, "Boss, your rules were too strict. That you didn't meet the standards." So until now, the only takeout order hasn't been successfully ordered. Mia nodded. "Too strict?" Meg muttered to himself. He had only requested for the food to be delivered closer. The person who received the takeout really didn't have the ability to come to Amy's to eat, and had the need to eat Amy's food. Was such a request really too much? Ding dong. The restaurant door was pushed open, and a burly man walked in. "Dear customer, the restaurant will be closing soon. Please come again next time." Mia glanced at the clock on the wall. The opening hours were already over. After the last few customers finished eating, the breakfast service would officially end. "I'm not here for breakfast. I'm staying next door. I heard that your restaurant has takeout. That means you can deliver food to a designated place at a designated time, right?" That man showed the warden's badge on his shoulder and went straight to the point. "Yes, it was just open today." Meg walked out of the kitchen and glanced at the warden's badge. He was staying next door to them in the Bathai prison. But was this warden ordering food for the prisoners? However, the takeout service has just started its trial operation. There are some requirements for the customers who order food. Meg thought for a while and swallowed the rest of his words. He directly asked, "May I ask, who are you ordering food for? What do you want? Where is the location?" Meg suddenly thought it through. Today's purpose wasn't to set the rules for the takeout service, but to steadily complete the system's first order task and receive the reward. If he was in a bad mood tomorrow, he might just stop this service. There was no need to be so particular. "I'm ordering a serving of Buddha jumps over the wall for our deputy warden. I'll send it to the Bathai prison next door. I heard that you only serve Buddha jumps over the wall at night." "In that case, I'll send it over tonight," that warden replied. Meg asked hesitantly, "Your deputy warden is the one who jumped out from next door some time ago?" The hairless monk, Rex, was the one who jumped out from next door on the day Buddha Jumps Over the Wall was officially launched. He was a ferocious character that attracted the Castellan, the lord of the Bathai prison, and the warden. Meg had a deep impression of him. Furthermore, he could also be seen a few nights ago. He would order a serving of Buddha Jumps Over the Wall every day without fail. In just a few days, his shiny bald head had already grown a head of thick black short hair. He could be said to be a living advertisement for Buddha Jumps Over the Wall. Yes, Sir Rex is now the deputy warden of the Bathai prison. That warden nodded with an unnatural expression. A few days ago, he was still one of the highest-ranking prisoners in the Bathai prison. In the blink of an eye, he became the deputy warden who was under only one person. Even the wardens couldn't adapt to this change in a short period of time. "Is the deputy warden not able to come to the restaurant personally today?" Meg asked again. "Yes, the deputy warden is on duty today, so he can't leave the prison." That warden nodded. "Perfect," Meg exclaimed in his heart. The deputy warden in the Bathai prison next door couldn't leave the prison because he was on duty. He had to eat Buddha Jumps Over the Wall to nourish his beautiful hair that had just started to grow. It just happened to meet the standards that Meg had set. All right, please tell the deputy warden that our restaurant's delivery staff will deliver Buddha jumps over the wall to the prison at 5 o'clock tonight. Please accept it, Meg said to that warden with a smile. He happily accepted the first takeout order. Chapter 1203. Mag felt much more relaxed after the first delivery order was confirmed. Moreover, compared to those complicated alleys and various houses, it would be easier for Connie to get lost in the Bathai prison if she were to deliver the food. It was such a big prison, and there was only one door. She should be able to get there, right? Please come again. Yabamiya sent off the last customer and flipped the wooden sign on the door to announce the end of business for the morning. Then what should I do? Connie walked down the stairs with her helmet. She didn't have to do anything when everyone was busy in the morning. Although it was easy, she couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. If you're really bored, you can ride the bicycle around the streets to familiarize yourself with the streets. Meg looked around, and his gaze settled on Anna. He smiled and said, Anna, do you want to go out with Connie for a walk? Sure. Anna nodded her little head. If she gets lost, remember bring her back, Meg said softly as he put a little white rabbit ear muff on Anna's head. Anna answered obediently. She followed Connie, who put on the helmet and walked out of the door. Be careful. Don't hurt Anna, Meg reminded Connie. Don't worry. I'm super smack. Connie, who was pushing the bicycle, stepped on a piece of ice and fell to the ground. She was crushed by the bicycle. Big sister Connie, are you all right? Anna asked anxiously. I'm fine. Connie's weak voice came from the ground. How dare you laugh at ugly duckling like that? Meg pursed his lips. He moved the bicycle away from Connie and then picked her up from the ground. Meow, ugly duckling poked its head out of the door and gave Connie a disdainful look. It's not a big deal. Connie coughed dryly and got on the bicycle. Then she patted the back seat of the bicycle and removed the insulated box. She said confidently, Little Anna, get on. Big sister will take you for a ride. I think I should continue to practice cooking in the restaurant, Anna said worriedly. Don't worry, there won't be a problem. Connie patted her chest and promised. Then she turned to look at Ugly Duckling, who was standing at the door. Her eyes lit up, and she said, Why don't we bring this stupid cat with us? Meow. Ugly Duckling's fur stood on end, and it disappeared through the door. Well, you don't trust me that much? Connie was a little disappointed. Unable to refuse Connie's invitation, Anna finally got on Connie's bike. Mr. Mag, I'm here on the Lord's orders. Mag was just about to enter when a black shadow appeared next to him and whispered to him. Come in. Meg opened the door and let the man in black enter the restaurant first. He followed him in. He had already noticed this black shadow, so he asked Anna to go out with Connie to play. This is what the Lord asked me to pass to you. The man in black handed a black wooden box that was about 1/2 meter square to Meg. Thank you. Meg took the box. It wasn't heavy, and it should be filled with information. However, it seemed like there was a lot of it. Goodbye. The man in black didn't say anything else. A black mist rose, and he disappeared in the blink of an eye. Meg carried the box upstairs to the study. This should be the latest information on the various races that Michael and Roland promised to share with him yesterday. Meg already knew the history of the Norland continent and the history of the various races by heart after reading nonstop for the past few months. However, the core information that was close to the ruling class of the various races, as well as the current situation of the various races, wasn't something that could be obtained by the encyclopedia. This information was what Meg needed the most. It was also one of the bargaining chips that he valued the most in this deal. After going upstairs and closing the study door, Meg placed the box on the study table. A dark gray light flashed across the surface of the box as soon as his hand touched the lock. The faint golden light that enveloped the box dissipated, and the lock opened with a click. After opening the box, there were stacks of information neatly stacked inside. They were all tied up with hemp ropes according to the categories, including the Roth Empire, the Wind Forest, and Chaos City. There were a total of 9 sets of information, and not a single power was missing. I wonder what kind of sincerity the Lord and the City Lord will show, Meg murmured to himself as he picked up the information on the wind forest. He untied the hemp rope and removed the top piece of paper. The first report with the word urgent, written in red, attracted Meg's attention immediately. The night elves obtained food through unknown channels and used the food quality of the elven guards to destabilize the guards' morale. A patrol team of 30 people defected at the same time last night and volunteered to join the night elves. Borg ordered to increase the intensity of the patrols and began to gather the troops to prepare for the second encirclement against the night elves. As for the wind forest, the High Priestess Helena has already gathered 5,000 elves because the guards have been trapped for a long time without success. They will set off for the underground cavern border tomorrow to meet up with Borg and encircle the night elves together. Meg put down the urgent report in his hand with a grave expression. Sargeras had just returned to Chaos City yesterday, so this urgent report should have just arrived. Michael and Roland were indeed very sincere. The situation of the night elves was worse than Meg had expected. It seemed like Helena and Borg had reached a consensus that the unstable factor, the night elves, had to be completely eliminated before the peace talks between the various races. After putting the urgent report aside, Meg continued to read the information on the elves. Soon, he came to an introduction of the night elves and the wind forest strength. After a month of rapid expansion, the night elves still had less than 1,000 people. Furthermore, most of them were slave elves with low combat abilities. Most of the elves who were rushing to the underground cavern from all over the Norland continent were intercepted by the elves sent out by the wind forest. Those who could reach the underground cavern did not have the strength to break through the blockade and meet up with the night elves. On the other hand, the wind forest had already sent out 10,000 elite guards to surround the underground cavern. Although they did not have the terrain advantage, they were completely superior to the night elves in terms of high-end combat power and core strength. Once they were determined to attack the underground cavern regardless of the cost, the night elves would very likely be wiped out. Meg pondered for a while before continuing to read the information on the elves. This information was very detailed and timely. The most recent one had just been sent back the night before, and it clearly listed the current situation in the wind forest, as well as the grievances of all the important figures in the elven race. Helena, that damned old hag. She really deserves to die, Meg murmured to himself as he put down the last piece of paper. Chapter 1204. Meg had only finished reading all the information about the wind forest in the morning. It was a lot of knowledge. Luckily, he had a good memory, so he remembered everything. And some of the things that Alex's memory was missing were like scattered fragments that Meg found and filled in one by one, allowing him to understand many things that he didn't understand before. Back then, the Elven Queen had issued 13 Queen's orders consecutively. In the end, she made Irina return to the wind forest and put her under house arrest with the reason that her serious injuries had relapsed. Although the outside world didn't know that Irina was pregnant, it wasn't difficult for Meg to deduce that Irina was pregnant with Amy at this point in time. And a few months later, a huge battle suddenly broke out at the Tree of Life. However, no one responded to it. Not long after that, there was news that Irina had gone into seclusion, and there was no news from her ever since. She had been quiet for 3 years. According to the spies in Chaos City, someone had seen Helena appear at the Tree of Life that day. The two of them might have fought, and Helena went into seclusion for a few months after that. According to the time, that was when Irina gave birth to Amy. Helena, that bitch, must have taken advantage of Irina's weakness to snatch Amy away and severely injure Irina. After that, it was that rainy night that targeted Alex. The infant Amy became the weapon in the hands of those fellows. Helena was obviously the most hidden mastermind behind the scenes. Seems like I have to make a trip to the underground caverns personally. Meg muttered to himself. If Helena led the troops to the underground caverns, the night elves would definitely be defeated. He had to do something personally. After closing the wooden box and putting it in the secret compartment behind the desk, Meg calmed himself down and went downstairs to prepare for the lunch service. Camilla arrived not long after Meg went downstairs. Camilla looked around. After confirming that there were only Meg and Ugly Duckling in the dining room, she walked into the kitchen, looked at Meg, and said, "Say, how long do you want me to work for you here?" "The current plan is 1 year." Meg looked back at Camilla and said with a smile, "Of course, if you want, you can work for a few more years. I'm very satisfied with your ability. Do you know what might happen if you let Countess Bartoli work for you for a year?" Camilla's voice was cold, and the temperature in the kitchen seemed to have dropped. "I only know that if you don't work for a full year, around midnight, many men's entertainment will be watching the photo stone," Meg said with a smile. "You?" Camilla's face turned red. This fellow actually said such shameless words. Thinking of her shameful appearance being seen by other men, she would have no face to see anyone in the future. "I'm a good person." Meg smiled. Camilla was the one who knocked him out with the baton, prepared the whip and candles, and brought the photo stone with her. If it wasn't for Mag's proficient tying skills, the story of that day would have been completely different. Therefore, Meg didn't feel guilty at all. Looking at Camilla, gnashing her teeth, he felt an inexplicable sense of pleasure. "Okay, but you have to write me a guarantee. If you don't give me all the photo stones after a year, I will kill you at all costs." Camilla took out a piece of parchment and a red pen from her bosom and slapped them in front of Meg. Meg straightforwardly picked up the pen and wrote a guarantee on the parchment. After a year, he should at least be able to rise to the 9th rank, right? If they were the same rank, Meg was confident that he could play Camilla in the palm of his hand. No matter how hard she tried, she wouldn't be able to cause any ripples. After signing his name, the parchment lit up with a red light and split into two, entering Meg and Camilla's bodies. "This is a magic contract. If you break the promise, you will be cursed for eternity." Camilla put away the parchment and smiled with a hint of satisfaction. This way, she at least had a minimum guarantee. "As long as you work hard, I will fulfill the promise." Meg nodded and didn't care about the contract. He continued, "Look at this soaked red pepper. It needs to be cut like this. I don't need you to tell me how to cut vegetables." Camilla waved her hand, and the basin full of red chautillon peppers flew into the air. 10 thin knives embedded in her fingers slashed across the air, and the red peppers that filled the air instantly turned into chopped peppers and fell back into the basin. "Barbecue, barbecue." Meg silently put away the kitchen knife and began to prepare some food that needed to be prepared in advance. No matter how you looked at it, he didn't look like the one with cheats. These guys were simply too strong. Although cutting vegetables isn't tiring, it's too depressing to work under this guy every day. I have to think of a way to make him give me the photo stone. Camilla looked at Meg's back and pondered. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. "Yes, if I have a copy of his photo stone, then I can make an equivalent exchange with him. I'll let you be proud. Tonight, I'll let you have a good taste of the whip and candle. This time, I won't let you have the chance to struggle." Camilla looked at Meg's back and sneered. It was as if she could already see him struggling pitifully under her. Just thinking about it made her feel very amused. "Madam Mafia, please take care. You're welcome to come again next time." Bonnie smiled as she sent a noblewoman onto a luxurious carriage and watched the carriage leave. Then, she heaved a long sigh of relief and revealed a bright smile on her face. It was a very successful reception. Madam Mafia, who was in a good mood, bought all the new jewelry for this month. She spent 15 million copper coins, which was basically equivalent to Shia Jewelry's monthly turnover. "The congee with pork and century egg has really helped me a lot." Bonnie touched her throat gently. She hadn't touched that small bowl of congee with pork and century egg, but her throat still didn't feel dry and itchy after she introduced tens of new products to Madame Mafia. Obviously, it was the miraculous effect of the congee with pork and century egg in the morning. "I really should thank Mr. Mac properly. Should I treat him to a meal?" Bonnie thought for a while and rejected that idea. There was no other restaurant in Chaos City that could make food as delicious as Mamie's. How could she not cough the entire morning? Callie looked at Bonnie, who was standing at the door, in disbelief. More importantly, Bonnie had signed a huge order worth 15 million copper coins and proved her powerful ability. Just this order alone would give her a commission of over 1 million copper coins. Envy, jealousy, fear, resentment. All kinds of emotions surged into Callie's heart at the same time. She thought Bonnie's throat would make her lose her biggest customer, Madame Mafia, pathetically, and then get fired by the store manager and become an abandoned child in the jewelry industry. She didn't expect that she, who had been coughing for a month, could actually complete the reception from Madame Mafia this morning without coughing. Chapter 1205. In the royal palace of Rodu, a knight stood in front of the king with his head bowed and respectfully said, "Your Majesty, that chef from Chaos City refused to come to Rodu, and my knight encountered the lord of the great temple, Roland, and was unable to bring him back. Please punish him, Your Majesty." He didn't want to come? A knowing smile appeared on the king's face as he waved his hand and said, "It's not your fault. He dared to refuse my invitation in the palace, so it's no surprise that he would refuse your invitation as well. However, I didn't think that Roland would appear in person for a chef." "Do you need me to investigate this chef?" the knight asked. "No need for that. I have something more important for you to do." Andre shook his head and said a few words to the knight in a hushed voice, after which the knight agreed to leave. "If he doesn't come, then I won't be able to explain myself to Vanessa." Andre heaved a forlorn sigh, and a hint of resignation appeared on his stern face. He paced back and forth in the palace before making his way out. Laura hurriedly ran into the room and said to Princess Vanessa, who was reading a book on her bed, "Your Highness, His Majesty is here." "Really? Father, did you invite Chef Meg here?" Vanessa immediately got up from her bed and allowed Laura to tidy up her clothes as she asked with an elated expression. Laura shook her head and said with certainty, "His Majesty didn't tell me. However, with His Majesty's invitation, there's no way that Chef would dare to refuse." "That's true. Father, you're the best king in the world." A smile appeared on Vanessa's face, and she quickly strode out of the room after tidying her hair. "Father, is Chef Meg here?" Vanessa quickly made her way over to the king, who was standing at the window, with anticipation in her eyes. "You keep talking about Chef Meg and Chef Meg as soon as you open your mouth. Have you completely forgotten about your father? Is the king of the Roth Empire inferior to a chef in Chaos City?" Andre said with a stern expression, but there was a hint of a smile in his eyes as he looked at Vanessa. "Who said so? No one in this world can compare to Father." Vanessa shook her head before asking with an expectant look in her eyes, "Has he arrived at Rodu, or have they arrived at the Imperial Palace? Can we have the dinner he cooks tonight?" Laura stood outside the door and listened to the conversation between the king and Princess Vanessa with a smile on her face. The king doted on the princess the most. She had never seen the king get angry and listen to everything the princess wanted. "He refused my invitation." Andre shook his head. "He refused?" Vanessa was stunned. She looked at Andre and said, "He's not willing to come and cook for us. He actually refused." Laura covered her mouth with shock in her eyes. There was actually someone in this world who dared to refuse the king's invitation, and he was only a chef. She had heard from the princess that he was a very good chef who could cook very delicious food. But no matter what, he was just a lowly chef. It was his honor to cook for the nobles. To be able to receive the king's invitation to cook for the king and her highness was such an honor. How could he refuse? Yes, he is an interesting chef. I invited him to stay in the royal kitchen during my banquet, but he also refused my invitation, saying that he wanted to go back and cook for his guests. Andre nodded. There were not many people who dared to refuse him, and Meg had refused him twice in a row. Even though he was only a lowly chef, he still remembered him. However, perhaps it was because the spicy grilled fish he made was too unforgettable, and he often thought about it when he was eating. He increasingly felt that the food in the royal kitchen recently tasted very ordinary. Is that so? He refused the king's invitation to cook for normal guests. He really is a very interesting chef. Vanessa was initially feeling a little dejected, but her eyes gradually lit up upon hearing that. A chef who dared to refuse the king's invitation must have extraordinary courage, and was willing to bring delicious food to more people instead of being restricted to the luxurious palace. This chef really was a great person. Don't be sad, Vanessa. Soon, no matter where he is on the continent, he'll have to come and cook for you as long as you ask, Andre consoled. Vanessa nodded. She turned to Andre and asked, I heard Uncle Abraham is in Chaos City now, and he comes to Mamie's every day to eat. Is that true? He just loves to eat. He went to Chaos City with that Chef Meg last time and didn't come back for a few months. Looks like he's forgotten that he's the Duke of the Roth Empire, Andre said with a hint of resignation in his voice. Among all of his brothers, Abraham was the one he couldn't discipline the most. Back when they were fighting for the throne, Abraham was the most determined to stand by his side. He had even taken an arrow for him during the battle for the throne and was severely wounded. After he ascended the throne, he had planned to entrust Abraham with important responsibilities, but after he recovered from his injuries, he resigned from all of his positions and only kept his title. He didn't even want to be given any land and did nothing but eat, drink, and play every day. It could be said that he was the most idle person in the Norland Empire. All right, then I'll wait for that day to come. I'll wait for Chef Meg to come to Rendezvous and cook delicious food for me, Vanessa said obediently. However, a sly look flashed across her eyes. A delicacy that could make Uncle Abel forget to go back had to be the best in the world. She had to try it herself. All right, I'll get the Imperial Kitchen to prepare your favorite snow pear porridge. Father, you're going to take care of some government affairs now, Andre said to Vanessa with a doting expression. Go ahead, Father. Vanessa nodded and walked Andre out of the door. After watching him disappear into the distance, she immediately waved at Laura. Princess. Laura made her way over. Laura, hurry up and pack your things. We're going to leave, Vanessa whispered. Are you going to Manor for vacation again, Princess? Laura was perplexed. They had only returned to the palace for a few days. Vanessa smiled slyly and said, That's what I told Father and the others, but we're actually going to Chaos City. I'm going to find Uncle Abraham. Chaos City. Laura's voice immediately rose a few octaves. Shoo, someone will hear us. Vanessa covered Laura's mouth. But your Highness, if the king and queen find out that you're missing, they'll be very worried, Laura whispered anxiously. Vanessa smiled and said, It's all right. When we reach Chaos City, I'll find Uncle Abraham and get him to write a letter to Father. Chapter 1206. Achoo. Abraham, who was standing in the long line in front of Mamie Restaurant, sneezed as he tightened his mink coat around himself. He couldn't help but murmur, I'm wearing this to keep me warm. Could someone be missing me? Uncle, everyone is thinking about Mr. Mac's new dish. Why would they miss you? Randy, who was standing next to him, looked at the notice board hanging on the door with a worried expression. I say, Gourmet, have you handed in your manuscript for this month? Abraham asked Randy with a smile as he turned sideways to look at him. The two of them had been sharing tables frequently during this period of time, so they had become familiar with each other. However, Abraham didn't reveal his identity as a duke, but he knew that Randy was a columnist for Carnivorous Doctrine and that he had to submit a manuscript to the magazine every month. Most importantly, he had delayed his manuscript again. Sigh, my life has been smooth sailing, and I became a columnist for Carnivorous Doctrine at a young age. I didn't expect to meet with a Waterloo at Mamie's. What a pity, Randy sighed, and was at a loss for words. Abraham rolled his eyes and said, Look at you. Aren't you trying to push the blame to Mr. Mac? He has created so many delicacies, and any one of them is enough for you to write a good article. Where else can you find such a good place? Even if you turn the whole of Rendezvous upside down, you won't be able to find another place like this, let alone Chaos City. Randy scowled and said, But that's where the problem lies. All the delicacies that Mr. Mac has launched are the best delicacies. Back then, when I published it on Carnivorous Doctrine, I made a huge promise that I would never write about it and share it with my readers unless I found the most delicious meat. Great, I've found the most delicious meat, but every one of them is so delicious, and they all have their own specialties. Isn't this killing me? I have difficulty choosing. So, young man, don't be too full of yourself. Abraham patted Randy's shoulder sympathetically. After thinking for a while, he said, "But why do you have to be so stubborn? Mr. Mac's meat dishes all have their own specialties. You can just try to dish every time, and it won't be the same. With the speed at which Mr. Mac releases new dishes, you just have to live nearby for the rest of your life. You won't have to worry about not having enough material." Huh? Randy's eyes lit up as if he had suddenly discovered something. Just as Abraham had said, with the speed of writing a food blog post every month, Mr. Mac was practically an inexhaustible treasure trove. Since that's the case, let's start with today's new dish, steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers. I think it's another one of Mr. Mac's bold creations. Randy's gaze became determined. He had already decided that he had to order a new dish and carefully taste the wonders of this dish. He had to write an article that would make people salivate. This was the pride of a food blogger. Ding! The bell rang, and Meg opened the door. He smiled and said, "Welcome, Amy's." The customers who had been waiting for a long time all smiled and greeted Meg before entering the restaurant. The first thing they did when they sat down was to flip open the menu on the table and search through the delicacies section. Then, they found the new dish hidden under the seafood section. Steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers. Steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers. 1,000 copper coins per serving. Noodles can be added, 50 copper coins for one tail. Wow, there are so many red chilies. Just looking at it makes my throat feel like it's on fire. Could it be hotter than the insanely spicy grilled fish? Harrison looked at the plate of steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers that was almost filled with red chilies and swallowed his saliva subconsciously. His urge to order a new dish was instantly extinguished. Many customers looked at the picture of the steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers, and some hesitation appeared on their faces. Many people had tried the spicy grilled fish personally before. It was spicy and refreshing, and it was irresistible. However, if this steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers was even better, it was probably not something that ordinary people could accept. Randy and Abraham sat at the same table again. Once they sat down, Randy flipped open the menu on the table, and his gaze quickly landed on the steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers. His eyes lit up instantly, and he could not help but exclaim, "The bright red chilies form a sharp contrast with the white and tender fish meat. It brings a strong impact. In terms of color, Mr. Mac is still as sharp as a genius. I also admit that Mr. Mac is a genius. However, if it's too spicy, it's not very friendly to middle-aged people like us." Abraham looked at the picture of the steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers and a conflicted expression appeared on his face. Of course, he wanted to try Mr. Mac's new dish. However, the spicy grilled fish was already too spicy for him. This steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers looked even hotter. It was a big problem whether to order it or not. "Uncle, then let us youngsters try it first," Randy said with a smile. Coincidentally, Yabamiya came to their table, so he said, "I want a steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers. However, how do you add noodles? Do you cook them directly in the fish head?" The surrounding customers were also listening attentively. The operation of adding noodles was indeed very curious. Moreover, 50 copper coins for 50 grams of noodles was not cheap. The noodles are served separately after the customers finish eating the fish head. The customers can pour the gravy of the steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers over the noodles before eating, Yabamiya answered with a smile. "Is this a new way of eating that Mr. Mac invented?" Randy raised his eyebrows. It sounded quite interesting. He smiled and nodded. "Then, I want to add another 200 grams of noodles." "All right, please wait a moment." Yabamiya nodded and left. This was the first customer to order the steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers. It was a good start. Dishes were brought out from the kitchen one by one, and then served in front of the customers one by one. When eating at Amy's, it was common to see the scene of plates floating in the air. There was no need to be too surprised. It was just Miss Barbara serving the dishes. The gravy in the plates did not ripple at all, let alone the terrible scene of the gravy splattering. Such a magical scene could not be seen in other restaurants. After all, not every restaurant could have a level 7 spatial magic caster serve the dishes. The laymen were just there to watch the show, and the professionals were naturally even more obedient. In this restaurant, just the waiters alone were not to be trifled with. Your steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers. Not long after, a large tray floated out from the kitchen and landed gently in front of Randy. A crisp sound came from the kitchen, and then the cover on the tray was lifted instantly. The dense steam spread out with a slight sour and spicy aroma of the fish. The eyes of the people sitting at the same table lit up immediately. The surrounding customers, whose auras were isolated, could not help but look at the steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers on the table. The fiery red chopped peppers covered the entire fish head, and there was a bright, oily glow. The bright color and rising steam made people salivate. This fish head smells so good. Abraham swallowed and could not help but exclaim, "Calm, wonderful bookhouse." Chapter 12:07. On the other side, Randy had already closed his eyes. He leaned forward slowly and sniffed carefully. His slender brows raised slightly, and he frowned slightly in surprise. It's different from the spicy grilled fish's aroma. There's a tinge of sourness in this spicy aroma. It's not too aggressive. Instead, it's like a gentleman's. The aroma of the fish is very special. It's not like the river fish near Chaos City. It doesn't have any fishy or muddy smell. The fresh aroma of the fish isn't covered by the chili. Instead, it's brought out by the sour and spicy aroma. The hot oil that was poured onto the fish head at the end was the real finishing touch. The boiling hot oil perfectly blended the chopped chili, seasoning, and fish. Just the fragrance alone was enough to make my stomach start to look forward to it. Gulp. Upon hearing Randy's words, the sounds of people swallowing their saliva could be heard. They couldn't smell the aroma, but they seemed to have tasted it. This was probably the explanation of having a taste. It's indeed different to be cultured. You can gulp so much just by smelling it, but I can only say smells good, Abraham said sourly. Randy opened his eyes. He didn't mind Abraham's sour words, and smilingly said, "The aroma is complete. Only this aroma is left. I need to test it." He picked up his chopsticks and picked up a small piece of chopped chili. "Why are you eating the red chili instead of the fish?" Abraham asked with a perplexed look on his face. "This chili seems to be different from normal chili. It's also different from the chili in the spicy grilled fish. I want to know what's the secret hidden here." "Naturally, I have to taste it myself," Randy answered casually before putting that small piece of chopped chili into his mouth. The sourness and spiciness blossomed on the tip of his tongue. The spiciness wasn't very strong, but the sourness stimulated the secretion of saliva in his mouth. Apart from that, there was also a tinge of saltiness. It was as if it had been placed in an old jar for a whole year to brew this sourness and spiciness. This reminded him of the bowl of pickled cabbage noodles that the lady boss of a small inn treated him to when he was staying in a small town a few years ago. That was the most delicious noodles he had ever eaten. Until now, he still often thought of that brown old jar in the corner of the kitchen. Those few pieces of pickled cabbage brought him a bowl of delicious noodles. After that, he had traveled to many places, but he had never tasted anything like it again. That feeling was just like that of the charming lady boss. That crazy rainy night, after finishing their noodles, they went from the kitchen to the bedroom, knocking over the oil and salt jars, leaving messy marks in every corner of the shabby hotel. They exhausted all their strength. He had never met a woman who was sour with a hint of sweetness. However, in this chopped pepper, he found that taste. Although it was chili, the sour taste immediately evoked his memories. He firmly believed that there must be an old pot in the corner of Mr. Mac's kitchen. It was just that it wasn't pickled vegetables, but chili. "How is it? Is it spicy?" Abel asked curiously. It was rare that Randy didn't respond for a long time. The other customers were also concerned. This aroma was described by Randy to be so tempting, but the spiciness was the most important thing. Abraham's words pulled Randy back from his memories. He nodded, shook his head, and said with a smile, "This chili is like a handsome, gentle, and courteous gentleman. It's awe-inspiring, but I can't help but open my legs, my mouth." After soaking it, the spiciness mellowed, and the naturally formed sour taste gave a unique taste. Seeing that you can still talk so much after eating it, it doesn't seem to be that spicy. Abraham nodded thoughtfully and was ready to order. "Now let me try this fish head." Randy peeled the chopped pepper, revealing the white and tender fish meat underneath. He picked up a piece of fish meat, dipped it in the red soup, and put it into his mouth. The sour and spicy soup was the first to bloom, instantly activating the taste buds in his mouth. His teeth bit into the fish meat easily. It was tender and bouncy, fat but not greasy. Although the sour and spicy taste had already soaked the fish head, it still couldn't wipe away the freshness of the fish meat itself. It was completely different from the small fish in the rivers of Chaos City, and also different from any fish he had ever eaten. It was a nobler taste. The wonderful texture and the wonderful sour and spicy taste were like a fireball exploding in his mind. It made his scalp go numb. "Is this fish steamed?" Randy looked at the fish in front of him in disbelief. It wasn't that he hadn't eaten steamed fish before. If the heat was right, the fish meat could indeed become fresh and tender. However, the biggest problem with steamed fish was that fishy smell that was difficult to get rid of. Even a best chef could only use some side dishes to cover it up and couldn't get rid of it completely. It became the biggest flaw. However, the fish head in front of him was different. Apart from the freshness of the fish meat, he didn't taste any fishy smell at all. The chopped pepper that covered the fish head added a sour and spicy taste to the fish head, but didn't cover up the freshness of the fish meat itself. Maybe it was because this unique fish really didn't have any fishy smell, or maybe Mr. Mac used a special method to get rid of the fishy smell, leaving only a wonderful aftertaste. Randy swallowed the fish meat and felt the warm current that made his scalp go numb. He looked at the people who were looking at him expectantly and smilingly said, "This wonderful taste can't be described with words. I can only write it down slowly when I go back." If you want to know what this taste is, please pay attention to the next episode of Mediterraneanism Tisk. Everyone click their tongues at the same time before raising their hands to place their orders. "Miss Mia, please give me a serving of steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers. I'd like 200 grams of noodles, too." Abraham was the first to raise his hand. He had already confirmed that this was a delicacy that he would regret if he missed it. "I like one, too." The customers began to place their orders. As long as it wasn't spicier than the insanely spicy grilled fish, everything was fine. As he listened to Mia's orders, he reached out and grabbed a fathead fish. He sighed and said, "Master Fatty, go in peace. Remember, the knife that killed you is called fathead fish. You didn't die in vain at all." Smack! He raised the knife, and that fathead fish that was glaring at him with its big blue eyes was sliced into two perfectly. Then it was cleaned very quickly and placed on the steamer. Chaos School. After class, Amy, who was crouching by the window to kill mosquitoes with explosive fireballs, saw Ignatsu, who was pacing back and forth hesitantly outside the magic classroom. She flicked her finger, and the explosive fireball that was flying towards the sky immediately changed direction and slid past Ignatsu's face. "Whoa!" Ignatsu jumped back in shock. The green bean sprout on top of his head swayed, and his gaze followed the explosive fireball into the sky. Then it exploded into fireworks all over the sky. "Hey, little bean sprout, what are you doing here?" Amy asked with a smile. Ignatsu looked up at Amy hesitantly and said, "Amy, someone wants to fight with me." Chapter 1208. Fight! Amy's eyes lit up, but she quickly covered her mouth. She turned around and whispered to Ignatsu, "Wait a minute, I'll come out." "Okay." Ignatsu nodded. Amy quickly snuck out of the magic room. She looked at Ignatsu with a smile and said, Little Bean Sprout, someone actually wants to fight with you? Yes, and it's a group fight. The kind where a lot of people fight together. Ignatsu nodded. Why would they want to fight with you? Can't they just beat you up? You don't look like you can beat anyone at all. Amy asked 3 questions in a row. Am I really that weak? Ignatsu felt like he had been dealt a heavy blow, but he quickly shrugged. A hint of helplessness appeared on his chubby face, and he said, When I came to school this morning, the little tyrant gang bullied me and Daphne, and they wanted us to give them all our pocket money. Because I couldn't beat them, I asked them to fight with me. Amy's little face stiffened, and she said angrily, How dare they bully Daphne? Let's go. I'll beat them until they cry. No, not now. We've already agreed to settle it in the alley outside the school after school today. It's against the rules if we go now. Ignatsu hurriedly stopped Amy and shook his head anxiously. The little bean sprout on top of his head also swayed. Okay, then tell them not to leave after school. Amy nodded. That's what they just told me. Ignatsu said meekly. Asterisk ring ring ring, asterisk the bell for class rang. I'm going to class first. Remember to come after school. The little fatty was shocked. He waved at Amy and ran toward the classroom. I really don't know what to do with you guys. Looks like there's too little homework. Amy sighed and turned to go back to the magic room. What's wrong? That little fatty asked little Amy to fight with him? Crassus asked with a smile as soon as Amy entered the room. Yes, little Beansprout said that someone bullied him and Daphne and even wanted to beat them up. Master, should I help them? Amy nodded honestly. Being able to help and protect our friends in times of need is the purpose of learning magic. Crassus nodded with a smile. However, he continued, the students of Chaos School can still be considered as enemies. Even if you attack them, you have to restrain yourself. Just give them a light punishment. Don't make things worse. Small punishment? Can't we just kill them all? Amy was a little puzzled. That's right. We will only use the most powerful means to kill those who threaten your life and the lives of your friends. Amy will need to learn how to observe and analyze the situation in order to protect the people you want to protect without bringing trouble to others, Crassus said with a smile. Amy thought for a moment and asked, but if you can solve the problem with a fireball, why go through so much trouble? If I can't use the most powerful magic, then why do I have to keep learning more powerful magic? Learning more powerful magic is so that when you meet more powerful opponents, you will have the same ability to deal with them. This is the upper limit. Crassus shook his head with a smile. Of course, a problem that can be solved with a fireball is not a problem at all. Then, those fellows who bullied little Beansprout and Daphne, what are they? Weak and detestable opponents? No, they just don't have enough homework. I will go and have a chat with Novin tonight, Crassus said with a serious expression. The little tyrant gang, the top power in the kindergarten of Chaos School, was a mysterious gang formed by powerhouses from the 1st to 6th grades. In recent years, they had appeared at the school's toilets and entrances. After the school bell rang, a group of primary school students with their left ankles exposed quickly gathered at the corner of the field. There were about 15 to 16 of them. A tall and skinny primary school student stood on a rock. He looked at everyone with a serious expression and said, Today is the 3rd anniversary of the establishment of the Little Tyrant Gang. My brothers have been with me for over 100 days and nights and built this huge foundation. We have a place for ourselves in the underworld of Chaos School. But today, there's a little fatty with a bean sprout on his head in the preschool class, and he wants to have a gang fight with our Lankum of the left. He is openly provoking us, the Little Tyrant Gang. He is looking down on me and all of you. Tell me, what should we do? Beat him up, beat him up, beat him up. All the primary school students answered in unison. They were rather agitated. Very good. A sinister smile appeared on little Tyrant Bolton's face. He took out a pink wand from his backpack and raised it high above his head. A pink light shone from the wand and landed on the bodies of the primary school students like pollen. All the primary school students' eyes lit up as though they had been injected with hormones. They followed Bolton valiantly to the school gate. At the school gate, Daphne looked at Ignatsu with a conflicted expression and said, Ignatsu, let's tell the teacher about this. I don't think it's a good idea to have a gang fight. Don't worry, Daphne. I will protect you. Ignazio looked around the school and patted his chest as he promised. Daphne shook her head and sighed. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried that you'll be beaten to tears. Do I look like someone who will cry? Ignazio's breathing stagnated, and his expression was a little unnatural. Then why are you shaking your legs? Daphne looked at Ignazio's two chubby little legs that were shaking. I'm just warming up. Ignazio pretended to jump on the spot. His legs gave way, and he almost fell. A tall and chubby primary school student came to Bolton's side and pointed at Ignazio, who was standing at the gate, as he said, "Boss, it's that little fatty." Bolton looked around. There was a skinny little girl beside the little fatty. He couldn't help but frown and said, "He won't just bring a little girl to have a gang fight with us, right? Our little tyrant's rule is to not hit girls. We can't break it because of this little fatty." I saw how confident he was in the morning, so I thought he could really get a big group of people to come. I didn't expect him to only bring a little girl. Lancome had an innocent look on her face. Forget it. Even if he's alone, we have to follow the rules. We can't ruin our reputation. Otherwise, people will say that our little tyrant is afraid of a little fatty. Bolton waved his hand and walked straight to Ignazio. He stopped beside him and sneered, "Little fatty, we will wait for you in front. If you have the guts, bring your people over." Chapter 1209. Do you know who my big sister is? Let me tell you, none of you are leaving. Just wait here. Ignazio was so scared that the little bean sprout on top of his head was bent. Big sister. Bolton stared blankly for a moment before he smiled and said, "I really want to know who your big sister is. I've never heard of any big sisters in the Sprout Garden. If she can protect you today, then our little overlords will follow her in the future. All right, we'll wait for you in the alley. Don't even think about running away. We're all watching you. If you don't come back in 10 minutes, we'll come over," Bolton said with a smile as he turned around and walked toward the alley not far away. The primary school students of the Little Tyrant Gang also followed behind Bolton valiantly. If it weren't for the fact that their pink wands were too flirtatious, and their heavy backpacks filled with books looked a little cute as they swayed back and forth, they would really look like members of society. However, Ignazio didn't find them adorable at all. Bolton was said to be a magic caster. Even the lowest level magic caster could easily defeat him. Of course, even if he wasn't a magic caster, he could easily subdue him with his height and weight as a 6th grade student. Many students passed by and looked at Ignazio with pity. This little fatty actually provoked the Little Tyrant Gang. Wasn't he asking for trouble? Why hasn't Amy come out yet? Ignazio stomped his feet anxiously. He only had 2 friends, Daphne and Amy. Although Daphne's father and grandfather were both excellent hunters, Daphne was a good girl and couldn't provide him with any help at all. "Why don't we run away?" Daphne whispered. "My grandfather said that if you meet an opponent that you can't beat, being able to escape ingeniously is also a kind of ability. No, as a man, I will not allow the word escape to be branded in my life." Ignazio shook his head firmly. He looked around and saw that the Little Tyrant Gang's people were guarding both sides of the street. Even if they wanted to run, there was nowhere to run. Most of the students had left, and the crowd at the school gate gradually thinned out. However, they still didn't see Amy. "Don't tell me Amy has already gone home to eat?" Ignazio pursed his lips dejectedly. Although Uncle Meg's food was indeed delicious, it would be terrible for him if she really forgot about the gang fight and ran home to eat. "If Amy agrees, then don't worry. She will definitely come," Daphne said confidently. "Amy is the most trustworthy person. But if she doesn't come now, it will be too late," Ignazio said with a melancholy expression as he looked at Lancome, who was standing at the entrance of the alley and waving at him. This big fatty who weighed at least 150 kilograms could flatten a little fatty like him with just his butt. It was precisely because of this size that he was basically unrivaled in the Green Bud Garden. He was the #1 vicious dog under Little Tyrant Bolton. "It's all right. As long as we stand here, they won't dare to come over," Daphne said with a relaxed expression. "No, I promised them 10 minutes, so it'll be 10 minutes. As a man, I can't break my promise. Ignatsu shook his head. He reached out to hold the 3 seeds in his pocket and whispered to Daphne, Daphne, stand at the entrance of the alley later and don't go over. Little Tyrant's principle is not to hit girls, so they won't do anything to you. I will attack them first later. No matter how many I can hit, you have to watch carefully. I'm not an idiot, nor am I a coward. Good luck. I have faith in you. Daphne clenched her little fist and encouraged him. Shouldn't you stop me at this time? Ignatsu glared at her. Why? I think you were right. It's okay if a man can't win, but those who don't dare to fight are all cowards, Daphne said with a smile. I'm not a coward. I am Ignatsu, a plant-type combat master. Ignatsu's gaze became determined as he walked toward the alley. Amy, hurry up and come. Daphne prayed in her heart as she followed behind Ignatsu. Boss, they are here, Lancome shouted toward the alley. How many? Bolton asked. Just 2, that little fatty and that little girl. Lancome smiled and said, looks like that little fatty really doesn't have any friends. He actually dares to fight with us. Everyone in the alley also laughed out loud. This was the dominance of the Little Tyrant gang. Ignatsu walked to the entrance of the alley with heavy footsteps. He was stunned when he saw the primary school students leaning against the wall with their backpacks. This was different from the Little Tyrant gang he had imagined. It was supposed to be a domineering scene. Instead, it was a group of licentious Tai Sui holding long and short sabers. Their eyes were full of arrogance, as if they could pierce through the sky with a raise of their legs. That was what he imagined a gang to be like. But their thin shoulders were bent under the weight of their heavy backpacks. They leaned against the wall, as if they were punished by the teacher to stand at the door of the classroom. Even the smile on their faces gave off a simple and honest feeling. As for Bolton, who called himself the Little Tyrant, he had a backpack slung over his shoulder and a pink wand in his hand. His rolled-up trousers revealed a section of pink socks, which instantly made that evil smile lose its deterrence. You guys have really disappointed me. Ignatsu sighed. He felt as if his fantasy had been shattered. He had also thought of joining the Little Tyrant gang to experience that domineering feeling. He didn't expect that reality would be completely different from what he had imagined. The Little Tyrant gang members in the alley, who had already put on what they thought was the most domineering posture, were all stunned. They looked at Ignatsu in confusion. Why did this little fatty, who was about to be beaten up, look so heartbroken? Bolton was also stunned. He said in a low voice, I say go, Demon Vine. Ignatsu took his hand out of his pocket and flung it at Bolton and the rest. 3 black seeds flew out and landed at the feet of Bolton, Lancome, and a senior student respectively. Demon Vine. Bolton took a look at that seed and lifted his leg to stomp it into the ground. He smirked and pointed the wand in his hand at Ignatsu. Beat him up. Crack, crack. Right at this moment, a black vine sprang out from the ground like a huge black snake and wrapped itself around Bolton's legs instantly. Almost at the same time, the seeds that Bolton and that student had stomped into the ground also grew out black vines. They started to grow crazily from their feet and tied them up like dumplings. Hey, Grandpa Fatty is here. Ignatsu yelled and ran towards the dumbfounded Bolton with his short and thick legs. Chapter 12:10. 3 black vines grew crazily from the ground and successfully trapped Bolton, Lancome, and Ignatsu, who suddenly sped up, crashed into Bolton like a meatball. The tall and skinny Bolton was entangled and could not cast any spells in time. He could only watch as Ignatsu crashed into him and fell to the ground. Little Tyrant, right? Today, I will be the one who punches Little Tyrant. Ignatsu rolled on the ground and jumped up nimbly. He rode on Bolton's neck and punched him twice in the face. The members of the Little Tyrant gang in the alley were still in a state of confusion. How did this bloated little fatty suddenly tie up the gang leader and the left emissary? How did he suddenly speed up, knock Little Tyrant down, and ride on him to attack crazily? Is Ignatsu that brave? Daphne, who was standing at the entrance of the alley, opened her mouth slightly. Her little face was full of shock, and she could not believe that this was the Ignatsu she knew. Catch this little fatty and beat him up," Bolton yelled as he recovered from the shock after being punched twice. The other primary school students also reacted and went forward to pull Ignatsu away. However, the black vines were too tough. They did not have any knives on them, so they could only watch helplessly. On the other hand, after Ignatsu was pulled away, he was punched and kicked. Although he tried his best to wave his chubby little hands, it was in vain. He kept retreating and even had a nosebleed. "Why you guys stop hitting him?" Daphne was so anxious that she wanted to rush forward. "We don't hit girls, but don't barge into our men's world. This is not something you can interfere in." A tall and skinny boy stood in front of Daphne and directly blocked her way with a serious face. Daphne tried to break through, but she could not get through. She could only stand there and watch anxiously as Ignatsu was beaten up. "All right, Amy gave me the cloud-piercing arrow." Daphne suddenly thought of something. She felt around in her bag and took out a small stick the length of a chopstick. She looked at everyone and said solemnly, "If you don't stop, I'm going to call for help." The alley suddenly fell silent. Everyone turned to look at the small stick in Daphne's hand and then burst into laughter. "Go ahead. I like to see who you can call." Bolton, who was helped up from the ground, moved his wrist and aimed his wand at Ignatsu. He sneered, "Little fatty, how dare you hit my face? I'm going to turn you into a pig's head today. A cloud-piercing arrow, and an army of thousands will come to meet me." Daphne repeated the command that Amy had taught her before, and then twisted the bottom of the stick. Swish! Bang! A fiery red firework rose into the sky and then exploded in the sky, turning into a bright fireball. It can really be released? The members of the Little Tyrant Gang looked up at the fireball in the sky with a surprised expression. Their gang was still at the level of shouting when calling for help. They didn't expect this little girl to be able to use such a high-level signal flare. She's just bluffing. If she could really call for help, why would she wait until now? Bolton pursed his lips, and a hint of envy flashed across his eyes as he looked at the fireball. He definitely wouldn't be able to create such an advanced item at his current level. Then, he looked at Ignatsu again and chanted a spell. His pink wand lit up with a faint pink glow. He pointed it at Ignatsu and shouted, "Transform, Pink Piggy." This was a spell that Bolton was famous for. It could use magic to turn someone's head into a pig's head, but it wouldn't cause any substantial damage to the target. However, being pointed at by others after becoming a pig's head was not as comfortable as being beaten up. Ignatsu's eyes widened. "No!" Daphne exclaimed. The members of the Little Tyrant Gang had expectant smiles on their faces. The little fatty's body shape and a pink piggy head should be a good match. Reflect, reflect. At this moment, a soft voice sounded from above everyone. A multifaceted prism made of ice suddenly appeared around Ignatsu, who was surrounded by everyone. The pink light beam released by Bolton landed on the prism, and instantly refracted into dozens of pink light beams that flew in all directions and landed on the members of the gang. "Ah!" Everyone exclaimed as their heads were shrouded in pink fog. After a while, the fog dissipated and all the members of the Little Tyrant Gang in the alley had turned into pink piggy heads. There were slight differences according to the size of their heads. Ignatsu, who had already closed his eyes and accepted his fate, opened his eyes. He was stunned when he saw the piggy heads around him. "What's going on? There are so many pink piggies." Daphne smiled as she looked at the piggy heads in the alley. "And my head." Bolton was still tied up, but he could already see his unusual pink nose. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Who knew what that ice wall was?" "Sorry, I'm late." At this moment, a figure flapping a pair of invisible wings descended from the sky and said apologetically, "I'm sorry. Amy, you're finally here." Daphne immediately jumped into Amy's arms and said excitedly, "My big sister, you're finally here. I was almost beaten to death." Ignatsu finally heaved a sigh of relief and sat down on the ground. He looked at the piggy heads around him and said with a silly smile, But the little tyrant gang seems to have become the piggy gang now. It's her. It's her. Our little hero. The members of the little tyrant gang were shocked when they saw Amy descending from the sky. She left a deep impression on them when she single-handedly defeated the Imperial Magic Caster team that came to challenge them. However, Ignatsu's words made them facepalm again. It's over now. The prestige that the little tyrant gang had accumulated over the past 3 years is all gone now. Bolton looked at Amy and swallowed his saliva. He didn't dare to move. She was someone who could take on a mid-tier magic caster single-handedly. He was only a second-tier magic caster who didn't know any offensive magic. He had no right to jump in front of her. Good girl. Amy patted Daphne's head lovingly. Then, she looked at the members of the little tyrant gang in the alley. She stretched out her right hand, and a ball of purplish gold flame danced slowly in her palm. She asked cutely, "Anyone else?" Plop. The tied-up Bolton's legs went soft, and he knelt down in front of Amy on the spot. He said sincerely, "Please accept us, big sister Amy. We, the little tyrant gang, are willing to follow you through life and death." Seeing this, the members of the little tyrant gang hesitated for a moment before they also half-knelt on the ground and said in unison, "We're willing to follow you." "Follow me?" A hint of doubt appeared on Amy's face. She stared at them for a while and then shook her head. "No, you're too weak." Everyone looked at each other. Compared to Amy, they were indeed very weak. "Little bean sprout, come to my house for dinner today. It's almost time. Let's hurry," Amy said to Ignatsu. Seeing that no one had any intention of resisting, she suddenly felt a little bored. "Let's go to your house for dinner." Ignatsu, who was originally sitting on the ground, suddenly jumped up. He picked up the school bag that was thrown aside, carried it on his back, and ran excitedly toward the entrance of the alley. The 3 children gradually disappeared into the sunset. "Boss, what should we do now?" Lancome said with a long face. The little tyrant gang's reputation had been completely lost this time. Since Big Sister Amy doesn't like us now, then we have to work harder in our cultivation. We have to reach a level where we can make her like us as soon as possible, Bolton said with a determined gaze. At the entrance of the restaurant, Meg looked at the fully armed Connie and reminded her, "Be careful on your way back. Send the things to the Bottai prison, then hand them over to their deputy warden, Sir Rex. You can come back after that." Chapter 12:11. "Don't worry, I'll complete the mission perfectly," Connie replied confidently as she pedaled away. As if. Meg looked at Connie's receding figure and sighed in his heart. He doubted his decision to take her in as a waitress again. "Mr. Mac, who was that just now? Why was she dressed so mysteriously?" Harrison asked curiously. Judging from the girl's figure, she didn't look like one of the restaurant's waitresses. "The restaurant's newly recruited delivery person," Meg replied casually. He was about to turn and enter the restaurant. "Father, can I bring Daphne and little Beansprout to eat at home today?" Just then, Amy came out of the bushes with Daphne and Ignatsu. They had taken a shortcut back. "Hello, Uncle Meg." Daphne and Ignatsu also greeted Meg. "Of course." Meg plucked a dead leaf from Amy's head with a smile. Then he looked at Ignatsu, who was hiding behind with his school uniform pulled up high to cover his face. There were many shoe prints on his clothes and bag, and there were also 2 fingernail prints on his forehead. He couldn't help but ask curiously, "What happened to little Beansprout?" "He went to fight with others," Daphne answered quickly. Then she held Amy's little hand and said with a smile, "Luckily, Amy came and turned those people into pig heads." "Gang fight?" Mag was slightly taken aback. A child at such a young age actually knew how to fight in a gang? No wonder Amy came back late today. He thought the Crassus had delayed the school. With Amy's strength, it was no problem for her to beat up Nanshan Kindergarten and Beihai Nursing Home. However, Amy didn't know how to control her strength sometimes, so he didn't know if she had hurt anyone. He stopped smiling and looked at Amy. "Amy, what's going on here?" "Someone bullied Daphne and little Beansprout, demanded pocket money from them, and even beat them up in the alleyway. So, I used the rebounding ice mirror to reflect the spell cast by that little baddie," Amy answered obediently. Daphne also quickly said they wanted to turn Ignatsu into a pig's head, so Amy turned them all into pigs' heads. Uncle Meg, Amy didn't do anything wrong. That spell is only effective for a day. It will disappear automatically when the time is up, Ignatsu added. Looks like Amy is the little magician who protected her little friend. Meg looked at the three of them with a smile on his face. He opened the door of the restaurant and said, "Our three warriors have just gone through a fierce battle. Let's go in and have a meal to replenish our energy. Let's eat." The three children all had happy smiles on their faces. By the way, Daphne and Ignatsu, do your parents know that you came back with Amy? If they don't, they might be worried, Meg asked as he looked at the three of them who were washing their hands in the line. Daphne nodded and said, "We met my grandfather on the way here. I already told him, and he said that he would come to the restaurant to pick me up later. I'm fine. They won't be around no matter when I come home." Ignatsu shrugged as a hint of sadness flashed across his eyes. Meg also knew that Ignatsu's parents were workaholics. Seeing that Ignatsu's nose was stuffed with cotton and there were many scratches on his face, he couldn't help but feel sorry for him. He smiled and said, "Uncle will give you a bowl of tofu pudding. After you eat it, the scars on your face will be gone when you wake up tomorrow. Then can I have a sweet one?" Ignatsu's eyes lit up with anticipation. "I like sweet tofu pudding." "Of course." Meg nodded before turning to Daphne. "Daphne, what flavor do you want?" "I like savory tofu pudding," Daphne blurted out. "I want all of them." Amy raised her little hand, too. "All right. After you wash your hands, find a table and sit down obediently. I will make something delicious for you," Meg said with a smile. The three children left the kitchen and turned to play with Anna and Ugly Duckling. Poor Ugly Duckling. Its round face was pinched into a square one moment, and then into a triangle the next, but it just lay there and didn't dare to move. Meg made dinner for the three children, a plate of Yangzhou fried rice for each of them. He looked at the time, and it was exactly 5 o'clock sharp, so he opened for business. The steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers at noon was unanimously praised by the customers. So many customers brought their friends over to try it in the evening. It was a very popular dish. When the busy evening business hours started, Meg couldn't be bothered with the children anymore as he busied himself in the kitchen. However, the little ones were very obedient. After they finished their fried rice and tofu pudding, they each took an ice cream and went upstairs to play. Amy's playground was their heaven. Daphne's grandfather came to pick her up not long after, and Ignatsu also went home after saying goodbye. At about 8 o'clock, Yabamiya walked into the kitchen with a pile of plates and worriedly said, "It's already 8 o'clock, and Connie hasn't returned yet. Could something have happened?" Meg, who was flipping the skewers, was shocked. He was so busy that he forgot that Connie had gone to deliver food. It was only a 10-minute ride from here to the main entrance of the Badai prison. She had been out for 3 hours, and she still hadn't returned. Wasn't this too abnormal? Could Big Sister Connie have gotten lost? Anna whispered, "I don't think she has any sense of direction. How can she get lost when she's next door?" Elizabeth was puzzled. That was what Meg wanted to complain about, but on second thought, with that fellow's brain circuit, it wasn't impossible for something like that to happen. Of course, it would be fine if she just got lost. Meg was just worried that she would do something ridiculous. There were still many orcs outside looking for her. She was really troublesome. There's still an hour before the closing time. Let's go look for her then. Meg looked at the full number of customers outside. No one could leave now, so even if she really got lost, she could only wander outside for a while. Okay. Everyone nodded and continued to get busy. Deputy Warden, the prison has been invaded. A prison guard rushed into the deputy warden's office in a panic. An invasion had never happened since the Badai prison was built. Phew, I was almost discovered. Why is this house so big? There's an entrance on the left and an exit on the right. After going underground, there's still so much space. Where exactly is the deputy warden's room? Connie, who was wearing a blue jacket and a helmet, leaned against the corner of the wall and hid in the shadows. She let out a sigh of relief. When the footsteps were far away, she looked at the three-forked passageway in front of her. Her face was full of hesitation. "I'm so tired. Weak, pitiful, helpless. I want to give up. Connie mumbled pitifully. They said it was just next door, and I could get there in no time. They didn't tell me how to get to such a big house, and I even had to climb over such a high wall to get in. No pop-up window. Chapter 12:12. Invasion. Lex looked at the frantic prison guard and was a little confused. Someone has entered the prison. Yes, they should be underground now, but the location of the invader has not been confirmed yet. The prison guard nodded, his forehead full of cold sweat. The Batai prison had been established for 100 years, and almost no mistakes had ever happened. It was known as the most impenetrable prison on the mainland, but in just a few days, there had been consecutive breakouts and invasions. It was simply unbelievable. Of course, the most unbelievable person who had broken out of the prison was standing in front of him now. It was said that because he was the first prisoner in the history of the Batai prison to successfully break out of the prison, the city lord had made an exception and appointed him as the deputy warden. Such a strange reward brought a lot of pressure to the prison guards in the Batai prison. The prisoners who were originally obedient and resigned to their fate had recently started to crazily attempt to break out of the prison in order to achieve their goal of becoming the deputy warden. Now, not only were the prisoners inside eager to break out of the prison, but there were also people outside who had invaded the prison. There were many serious criminals in the Batai prison, and many of them were criminals with extremely high abilities and statuses. If this was a premeditated prison break, things might develop to an uncontrollable stage. Just follow your plan. Look for me when you need me to take action, Lex said. He had only been the warden for a few days, so he was not very clear about the various rules and matters in the Batai prison. He did not want to give orders carelessly and cause chaos. Yes, the prison guard responded and turned to leave. The Batai prison did indeed have a mature plan to deal with invasions, and it was often practiced. Oh yes, did anyone send anything over just now? Lex suddenly asked. No visitors today. The prison guard shook his head. All right, you may go. Lex raised her hand, and the prison guard left. She was the only one left in the office. Did Mr. Mack forget about it? Because he was too busy? He said it would be at 5 o'clock. Why hasn't it been delivered yet? Lex muttered to herself. Mamie's office was quite close to the prison, but since there was an invader now, he could not leave his post. He had to capture the mysterious invader first. Someone actually dared to invade the Batai prison. They are really bold. I wonder which tribe they are from. Shit, 3 tunnels again. What kind of place is this? Why are they locking people up in small houses? Connie stood at the crossroads of life once again. She looked at the 3 eerie paths with a conflicted expression. She had seen many small houses along the way. There were all kinds of races locked up in them, but all of them looked very fierce. She didn't dare to ask for directions and just walked over quietly. Connie, in the dark passage, there was a dim oil lamp every 10 meters. There was a damp and moldy smell mixed with feces in the air, and the snoring sound was like thunder. Connie carried the incubator in her hand and walked forward cautiously. She looked at the men locked behind the iron bars. Hello, do you know how I can become the deputy warden? Who? She was answered by a series of thunderous snoring. Little girl, are you here to look for the deputy warden? A sinister voice sounded from the cell next door. Yes. Do you know where he is? I've been looking for him for a long time, but I can't find him. Connie walked to the cell next door. A skinny old goblin in dark green leaned against the bars and looked at her with a smile. Why are you looking for the deputy warden? He's not someone that just anyone can meet. The goblin stared at Connie. He could not tell what tribe she was from because she was wearing a special mask. However, he was sure that she was not a warden. I'm here to deliver food to him. He ordered takeout from our restaurant, Connie answered honestly. She looked at the goblin and said, Can you tell me where he is now? I have to get the food to him as soon as possible. Otherwise, the soup will get cold. Of course I can tell you where he is. But this underground palace is too complicated. I'm afraid you won't remember, even if I tell you. Why don't you let me out first? I'll take you to him, the goblin said with a smile. His protruding eyeballs rolled around in his eye sockets. Let you out. Connie looked at the bars between them. There was a big lock on the door next to them. Yes, let me out, and I'll take you to the deputy warden. Then you can finish your job, the goblin said with a bright smile. By the way, you're a goblin, right? Connie suddenly asked. The goblin was stunned for a moment. He nodded and said, why yes. Goodbye. Connie turned to leave. Hey. Little girl, don't go. I can really take you to the deputy warden, the goblin said anxiously as he grabbed onto the bars. Father told me not to make deals with goblins. You guys are the best at lying, Connie said without turning back. Although she was very smart, she still had to listen to her father. After walking around randomly, Connie felt that she had gone down another 2 levels. Originally, she was prepared to ask those mysterious people for directions, but along the way, she didn't meet a single one. Did you find him? Just now, a prisoner said that he saw a person with an especially big head walk past the first level. But that level has been searched thoroughly, and we didn't find anyone suspicious. Seal off the exits of every level and focus on searching between the 1st to 5th levels. Send the signal immediately if you find him. Yes, sir. The prison guards hurriedly ran through the prison's passageways. This intruder was extremely cunning and had actually managed to avoid all the traps and patrols. So far, no one had seen him, and they could only hear sporadic descriptions from the prisoners who were locked up. Ding, ding, ding. Warning. The intruder is on the 4th level. First order incident. Requesting backup. At this moment, an ear-piercing alarm rang throughout the Batai prison. The powerhouses in charge of guarding the perimeter and the deeper parts of the prison rushed to the 4th level at the same time. Someone had invaded the 4th level. This was a disgrace to the entire Batai prison. What is this? Why does it scream? At a crossroad, Connie kicked something that looked like a giant snail, her face full of curiosity. Who is it? Raise your hands. At this moment, dense footsteps sounded from all 4 passageways. A blinding light shone on Connie's body. A group of mages and knights rushed out from the passageways and shouted anxiously. I'm just a delivery guy. Looking at the crowd that suddenly appeared, Connie innocently raised the thermal box in her hand and said weakly, Chapter 12:13. A delivery man. The 4 tunnels were filled with wardens. There were many level 7 and level 8 knights and mages, but they did not act rashly. They were all stunned when they heard the words of the mysterious person who had snuck into the 4th floor. This person did not look big, but he was wearing a strange-shaped mask that covered his entire head. He was wearing a strange-looking shirt with the words, "Are you full?" written on the back. He looked extremely creepy. To be able to sneak past the high walls of the Batai prison, sneak into the 4th floor, and avoid all the patrolling guards, this person must be very powerful and talented. They had to be careful. Speak. Who are you here to rob? A warden shouted. Rob who? I'm not here to rob anyone. I'm here to deliver food. It's just that this place is too big, and I got lost while walking around. Don't stare at me like that. I'm scared. Connie was so aggrieved that she was about to cry. Was it easy for her? She had walked around in circles for hours in such a lousy place, and now she was surrounded. What do these fierce-looking people want to do to her? Don't put on an act. If you don't tell the truth, don't blame us for being rude. Although that person sounded like a little girl, the wardens did not let down their guard. There were all kinds of prisoners in the Batai prison. They had seen the Bull Demon King, who had a Loli's voice. This person with a mask covering his face might be an ugly thing. I'm telling the truth. I'm really just a delivery man, and I got lost by accident. Connie was so anxious that she was sweating profusely. Was she, who was as beautiful as a flower, going to die here? Have you caught the intruder? A low voice sounded from behind them. Everyone made a path, and Rex walked forward. His gaze landed on Connie, and his thick eyebrows were knitted together. A warden answered, Yes, Deputy Warden. We have successfully locked onto the intruder, but she insisted that she was not an intruder. She said that she got lost. Getting lost in the Batai prison. What a ridiculous reason. Looks like this is a stubborn intruder. Let's judge him on the spot, Lex said in a low voice. Her right hand was clenched into a fist. If she got off work now, she could still go next door for supper. Deputy Warden Connie, who was anxiously pacing back and forth, suddenly had a gleam in her eyes. She looked at the burly man with short, thick hair standing in front of everyone. She raised the insulated box in her hand and exclaimed in delight, "It's you. You were the one who ordered the takeout. I finally found you." Lex was stunned as she retracted her fist. Buddha jumps over the wall. It's your Buddha jumps over the wall, Connie said as she opened the insulated box and uncovered the small jar inside. A rich and alluring fragrance instantly gushed out and then surged into the 4 tunnels. It smells so good. All of the prison guards' eyes lit up as they stared at the thermal container in Connie's hand with incredulity. What kind of food was this? How could it give off such an alluring aroma? Buddha jumps over the wall. Lex's eyes lit up as well. He was very familiar with this aroma. His thick hair grew out from the daily servings of Buddha jumps over the wall. Only Mr. Mac could make Buddha jumps over the wall, and there was a limited amount every day. He sent someone to order one today, and Mr. Mac promised to send someone to deliver it to him at 5 o'clock. However, it hadn't arrived yet. You were sent by Mr. Mac to deliver the food? Lex asked. She still had some doubts in her heart. Deputy Warden, you know this intruder? All of the prison guards were shocked when they heard that, and they felt a little strange. This deputy warden had successfully escaped a few days ago and became the first person to break out of the Bodhi prison. Now, another person who had successfully invaded the Bodhi prison was related to him as well. Yes, Mr. Mac asked me to deliver the food to you. Connie nodded quickly. Finally, there was someone who could understand her. Lex looked at Connie with a scrutinizing gaze and said, "You can just deliver the food to the door. Why did you invade the Bodhi prison? And you even came to the 4th basement level." "I couldn't find the main door after walking around, so I climbed over the wall and came in. Then I saw a big house inside. I guess you must be inside, so I came in. However, the passageway inside was very winding, so I got lost. I walked for a few hours, and my legs were about to break." Connie was angry and aggrieved. She even started to sob in the end. Everyone was silent when they heard that. They felt sorry for her inexplicably. It wasn't because of her misery, but because of her stupidity. Oh my God, what kind of person was this? She could create a first-order incident in the Bodhi prison just by delivering food. Lex loosened her fists and said to all the prison guards, "The alert has been lifted. Everyone, go back to your positions and guard your posts. Bodhi prison doesn't deserve to be called the #1 prison on the Norland continent if even a little girl who delivered food could sneak in." Yes, all the prison guards answered shamefully. They had already confirmed the identity of this intruder through the deputy warden. She was a delivery girl from the restaurant next door. The Bodhi prison, which was known to be impregnable, was successfully invaded by a little girl who delivered food without hurting anyone. If this were to spread out, they would really have nowhere to put their faces. Lex looked at Connie and said, "Take the Buddha jumps over the wall and follow me." Okay. Connie covered the small jar obediently and followed behind Lex with the insulated box. In comparison, this fierce-looking uncle was slightly better. At least he could understand what she was saying, and he was also the target of her mission today. The alarm stopped, and all the prison guards returned to their posts with complicated feelings. All of them were on high alert to guard against new intruders. The same thing must not happen again. Lex brought Connie back to the office above ground. She pointed at the table at the side and said, "Put the Buddha jumps over the wall there." Okay. Connie took out a small jar of Buddha jumps over the wall from the insulated box obediently and placed it on the table gently. She stood at the side with the empty insulated box and didn't dare to move at all. She only dared to size up Lex from the corner of her eyes. This muscular uncle had an intimidating aura, just like her father. He had to be a very powerful powerhouse. Furthermore, she seemed to have gotten herself into some serious trouble just now. In order to leave this place alive, she decided to be more obedient. However, this room was too warm. She was wearing a thick down jacket and a thermal helmet. The dizziness caused by the heat was attacking her. "Are you very hot?" Lex, who had sat down at the table, asked Connie. "Huh, it's so hot." Connie only had time to take off her helmet before fainting on the ground. "Cat ears? Orc? What does this little fellow have to do with the Fog tribe?" Lex looked at Connie's pair of cat ears and stood up immediately as she mumbled to herself. "Calm. Wonderful book house." Chapter 12:14. Rex carried the unconscious Connie onto the table and placed his hand gently on her forehead. After making sure that she had fainted from the heat, he couldn't help but chuckle to himself. She's exactly the same as that lass back then. She fainted from the heat. He retracted his hand and stared at Connie's face for a while. She had a delicate face, brown curly hair that was drenched in sweat, pinkish-white cat ears, and a few freckles on the tip of her nose. "She does resemble that lass back then. Even these freckles," Rex murmured in a daze. After a while, he came back to his senses and said with a complicated expression, "100 years have passed. I wonder how she is now. With the lifespan of an orc, she might not be around anymore." Rex stared at Connie for a while and pressed his hand gently on her shoulder. He used a strong source power to drive away the heat in her body. Connie moaned and slowly opened her eyes. She happened to meet Rex's eyes and could not help but be shocked. She rolled off the table and onto the floor. "Ouch!" Connie screamed and got up from the floor while rubbing her butt. She looked at Rex and complained, "Uncle, what are you doing? You fainted. I saved you." Rex spread his hands and said calmly, "Is that so?" Connie thought for a while. She did faint from the heat just now, and there were no traces of being violated on her body. It seemed that this uncle was a decent person. She thanked Rex. "Thank you. I've already delivered the food. Give me the money. I'm going back." "All right." Rex opened the drawer of the table and took out 10 dragon coins and a gold coin for Connie. "Then I'm leaving. Goodbye." Connie kept the money and picked up the helmet on the table. She turned around and was about to leave. "Do you know Debbie?" Rex suddenly asked. "Debbie?" Connie stopped and thought seriously. She turned around in shock. "How do you know my grandmother's name?" "I knew it." Lex understood. So this little girl was her granddaughter. No wonder she looked so similar to Lex back then. However, it seemed like she still married that guy in the end. "Hey, Uncle, I'm asking you. How do you know my grandmother?" Connie could not help but ask when she saw Rex in a daze. In an unfamiliar place like Chaos City, she suddenly heard her grandmother's name from a middle-aged man whom she had met for the first time. She was both excited and wary. "I've seen your grandmother before. She looks a little like you, so I was just asking." Lex came back to her senses and restrained her expression. She tried to ask as calmly as possible, "Is she doing well?" "She passed away." Connie's expression darkened, and his voice became low. "After father was killed, she drank the poison and told me to run away from the tribe alone." "Is she dead?" Rex clenched his fists tightly. The scenes from over 100 years ago kept flashing past his mind. That cat-eared young lady whom he saved by accident chased after him recklessly and foolishly created one farce after another. Although most of the time, she could only chase after the traces he left behind, and the days that she really spent with him added up to less than a month. The 3 years that he was chased after were probably the 3 years of his life that were slightly colorful in the past. After that, he took his revenge and had no more goals in life. He was locked up in the Bothai prison and was completely isolated from the outside world. Until today, when he saw Connie again, the throbbing in his heart suddenly made him understand his feelings. However, she was already dead. There were some words that he would never have the chance to say to her again. "Back then, when my hair reaches my waist, I will marry you," actually came true. Rex suddenly felt that his heart had become a little empty, as if something important was missing. What is the relationship between this uncle and my grandmother? Connie sized Rex up secretly. She could feel Rex's sadness when he heard the news of her grandmother's death. Buddha jumps over the wall, long hair. Connie glanced at the Buddha jumps over the wall on the table, and her eyes lit up. She looked at Rex and said, "Could it be that uncle is bald? The hairless monk? You are the hairless monk that my grandmother always talks about, right? She grew up with her grandmother. Ever since she was young, her grandmother had never told her the stories of the Fok tribe's heroes. She only told her stories about the hairless monk. That was a superhero without hair. Rex's lips moved as he asked Connie, "Did she mention me to you?" "Of course. I grew up listening to your stories. Grandmother told me again and again. I can even memorize them all." Connie nodded. Her eyes were shining as she looked at the hairless monk. This was the most powerful hero in her heart, and he was actually standing right in front of her now. 100 years have passed. I didn't expect her to still remember me, Rex murmured with a smile on his lips. In this world, she was probably the only one who could treat him as a hero. In the eyes of the world, he was a great demon who committed all kinds of crimes. Even now, those prison guards were still filled with fear when they faced him. Connie looked at Rex with a burning gaze and said, "Hairless monk, can you take me in as your disciple? I want to be as powerful as you." "Take you in as a disciple?" Rex looked at Connie. "Why do you want to be my disciple? What happened to the Fok tribe now? Gary, that big baddie, betrayed us. He killed my father, imprisoned my elder brother, and became the new chief of the Fok tribe. I want to become powerful, go back to save my elder brother, and kill that baddie Gary," Connie said with a determined gaze. Rebellion. Rex frowned. The Fok tribe was the second largest tribe among the orcs. They were very powerful, and their chief was not the only 10th-tier powerhouse in the tribe. Killing the chief and becoming the new chief was probably not something that Gary could do. That baddie colluded with a few elders in the tribe, and even received reinforcements from the August tribe. "He is a traitor, and also a traitor," Connie said angrily. Rex was silent for a while. He looked up at the fuming Connie and calmly asked, "If you want to be my disciple and become a powerhouse, the process will definitely be very tough. You might even suffer a fate worse than death. Can you persevere?" "If I can kill that traitor and save my elder brother, I will definitely persevere." Connie nodded with determination. Rex looked into Connie's eyes, just like that young lady who said to him with determination, "I will definitely catch up to you more than 100 years ago." "Debbie, I'll let you down back then. Let me pay it back with your granddaughter," Rex thought to himself. Then he nodded at Connie and said, "Then let's start training tonight. Wait for me at the entrance of the prison at 10 p.m. Uncle, does that mean you agree?" Connie was stunned. "What should I call you if you want to be my disciple?" Rex asked with a straight face. "Master," Connie called out happily. "You can go back first. I want to eat too." Rex turned around with a smile on his face, but his voice was still calm. Bookhouse reading website, that you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.